and I'm going to call to order the meeting, the April 17th evening meeting of the Johnston County Board of Commissioners, and welcome all those who are here tonight in person and those who are watching on live stream. And I will include our Commissioner April Stevens, who is joining us from Jamaica. Why she's doing that, I don't know, but she will be on there and join us in our meeting today. So I did want to remind folks that for the past 2 years, we have set 6 priorities for this board for the county. They are infrastructure, financial stewardship, land use, public safety, and county employees. So as we go through our items tonight, I want you to, and we will consider as well, but I want you to think about those 6 and how they apply to each one of the agenda items that we have before us tonight. With that, I will do the customary thing. We'll open with the prayer and the pledge. I've asked Commissioner Patrick Harris to open us with the prayer, and Commissioner Fred Smith to lead us in the pledge. So if you would, please stand.
Let us pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you in humble prayer this evening. Father, we thank you for the blessings that you bring to each one of us. Lord, we thank you for this day and all that comes with it. Father, as we gather here tonight, we ask your blessings on all that we do and say. Father, bless this county, bless the people who live, work, and play here. Father, we just ask that you be with us to help us make good decisions, lead us and guide us. Watch over our military personnel and our first responders. Lord, keep them safe. Put your hedge of protection around them. Lord, we ask these things tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. All right, the first item on the agenda is approval and or discussion of the agenda. Is there any need for discussion, or do I need a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up, we have a resolution recognizing Elite Express Track and Field All-Americans, and I will call on our very own Health Director, Dr. Marilyn Pearson, to come up and give us a little information on that before we bring the resolution up.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for having us here. I am chair of the Board of Elite Express Track and Field. I'm also a coach. And our club is the only youth and track and field club here in Johnston County, affiliated with AAU and USATF. And we have a number of kids, age 5 to 18 in our club. And so we have multiple members of our club here who participated in indoor AAU and USATF championships this year. But I'd like to introduce our coaches. A number of them are here. Some of them are actually some of our Masters athletes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But our head coach is Desmond Kennedy.
Good.
We have Coach James McLean, Coach Barry Austin, Coach Chris McIver, Coach Tony Saunders, and Coach Ronald Stallings. All of our coaches are volunteer coaches, and they do great work with our kids. Our goal is to develop these athletes so that they can advance past high school, but also to mentor them and make them good citizens. So we have a number of our athletes, as I said, that participated in the AAU Indoor National Championship. This was in Virginia, our youth athletes. So I'm going to call, 2 of them were not able to be here today, but the others that are here are Nyla Simpson. Stand up, Nyla. Nyla's a 9-year-old. She placed 3rd in the 1,500-meter race walk.
Wow. That's awesome.
Kingston Bullock. Kingston placed 8th in the 1,500-meter run. He's 11. Aaron Austin. Aaron placed 6th in the high jump and 6th in the shot put. He's 12. Barry Austin. He placed 2nd in the shot put. He's 15-16. James McLean. He placed 8th in the 15-16 long jump.
Wow.
And we had 2 other youth athletes, Ryan Davis, who was 10. She placed 3rd in the shot put. And Kendall Davis, who's 13, and she placed 4th in the high jump and 5th in the shot put. They represented Johnston County well. So those are our youth All-American indoors champions.
That's awesome.
Let's give.
In addition, we have a number of our staff, our coaches, that participate in the Masters in track and field. So if you're 19 or older, that's open, but we have Masters championships, so all of you all are invited to participate. There are 80 and 90-year-olds participating in track and field, so I know all of you are younger than that, so you can be a part of this. Make faces. There you go. All right. So I want to recognize them. They participated in the USATF Indoor Masters National Championship in Kentucky. And so we have Chris McIver. He's in the 40 to 44 age group. I hope y'all don't mind me telling your age. He placed 1st in high jump and 5th in long jump.
Wow.
Wow.
Tony Saunders, he's in the 50 to 54 age group. He placed 3rd in shot put. And Ronald Stallings, he's in the 60 to 64 age group. He placed 1st in long jump,
Wow.
1st in triple jump, and 3rd in the 60 meters.
Wow.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
So this is our team here. We have a number of athletes. We have about 50 athletes right now. Some of them are training only, some of them are competitive. We've just started our outdoor season, and we have a meet in Charlotte this week. But thank you for having us and recognizing our athletes.
I have a question, Doctor.
Yes.
Where do you train at? Where do they train at?
So thanks to Triple S High School, we have been utilizing their track for the last few years. So Mr. Allen and Ms. Rose there have been very helpful in allowing us to use their track. We've just started using Corinth Holders High School also,
good.
1 day a week.
Good.
You want some pictures up here, Don?
Well,
Yes.
we need to read the resolution. In addition to that, I think we have letters for you to pass out to the athletes for each one of them.
Absolutely.
And I was going to add to, before you get started, is you need to add to your medical staff if you see me come out there to participate. So just
Do you have
saying.
a
No,
defibrillator?
If he goes out, Alliance will need to be involved.
Yeah, that's true. All right, go ahead.
I was thinking when you were saying that, y'all do really want to win, right? So we have a resolution recognizing the Elite Express Track and Field All-Americans. Whereas the Elite Express Track and Field Club was formed in 2019 with a vision of promoting the sport of track and field in Johnston County. And whereas the Elite Express Track and Field Club is the only track and field club in Johnston County. And whereas the Elite Express Track and Field Club is affiliated with the AAU, the Amateur Athletic Union, and the USATF, or USA Track and Field. And whereas the Johnston County Board of Commissioners takes pride in recognizing the accomplishments of all the athletic teams in Johnston County. And whereas the Elite Express Track and Field Club attended the 2023 AAU Indoor National Championships in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And whereas the coaches of the Elite Express Track and Field Club attended the USATF Indoor Masters National Championships in Kentucky, and whereas the Elite Express Track and Field Club and the coaches represented Johnston County well at this national level by placing near the top in many of the events held. And whereas the Johnston County Board of Commissioners recognizes that these great accomplishments bring nationwide recognition and distinction to all of Johnston County. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Johnston County Board of Commissioners hereby publicly recognize and congratulates the Elite Express Track and Field All-Americans for their participation and achievements at the 2023 AAU Indoor National Championships and the USATF Indoor Masters National Championships, adopted this 17th day of April, 2023. Mr. Chairman, I'll make that in the form of a motion to approve.
I say.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I think that was a
That
delay.
was
I
her.
think that is a
Oh, it was a
delay.
delay.
That's a delay.
I said, I
That was April's delay.
She's in Jamaica.
So remind
Sorry.
us of that being that we
I'm
need
just
to
super excited
pause a
and
little
proud of
bit. so.
them. Sorry for the delay.
Okay, so, I forgot where I was now. We got a motion, we approved it.
Winners
Oh,
pick-
no,
I'll fill in the gap.
thank you.
This morning, the winner of the Boston Marathon won in 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 56 seconds. My best time in a marathon was 3 hours, 28 minutes. So I congratulate these fine athletes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And so I think we want to get a picture, so
Yeah.
let's come up and let's take a picture right quick.
Take my glasses off and stand on tiptoe.
All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you might,
We gotta be able to see Nyla, you know.
You move up there in the front, huh? There you go.
you might need to slide her to the left a little bit. There we go, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you, Doctor. Took a picture of the camera, your leg got please.
I was just thinking about the triple jump and how my knee would fall. Get first jump, my knee would be gone, much less doing it 2 more times.
I can't get enough speed to do anything.
All right, we'll give them another minute to clear the room, and then we'll proceed on with the next item.
Or at consent agenda.
Yeah, consent. All right. I'll let other folks get in the room. All right, we'll proceed on with the next item, which is the consent agenda. We have 5 items with various pieces in it to approve. We have approval of the minutes from March 20th meeting, the evening session. We have approval of the fiscal year 2023 annual plan for HAP. The Sheriff's Office, we have approval of the jail medical contract and jail health plan. And then we have appointments to several fire-related boards to approve, as well as the Pleasant Grove Community Building Board of Trustees. We also have budget revisions for our health department, finance department, and social services. So any of those items need to be withdrawn for separate discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as stated.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. This is a time for any audience member to come forward and speak to an item that is not already on the agenda. We ask that you keep your presentation to 3 minutes, and we ask that you also maintain proper decorum and make comments in a civil manner. And just a reminder, this is a public comment period and a listening session for the commissioners. And we do ask that when you come forward, that you would state your name and the town or township that you're from. So with that, I will open the floor for public comment.
Hi, I'm Erica Hall. I live in Clayton in the Flowers area. So good evening, County Commissioners. I'm with Down Home, North Carolina, and I have 3 children enrolled in Johnston County Public Schools. We come before you today with a sense of urgency and passion regarding the critical issue of supporting Johnston County Public Schools, which is the largest employer in the county. As we speak, teachers in all 46 schools within our county are forced to dip into their personal finances to purchase basic supplies such as pencils, paper, folders, facial tissues, cleaning products, books, and art supplies, and much more. This unfortunate reality is not a one-time occurrence, but a recurring one, happening several times throughout the year. On average, our educators will spend over $500 of their own hard-earned money. As a community, we are witnessing an alarming trend of teacher and staff shortages across the nation. Our educators are leaving our county because they do not feel adequately supported, appreciated, or compensated for their invaluable services. They are overworked, underpaid, and often lack the resources they need to provide the highest quality education to our children. We have conducted surveys, and the data we have collected shows that education is one of the most critical areas of focus in our county. Our teachers, who comprise the most significant part of our workforce, are feeling tremendous pressure to seek donations from parents and community members to cover basic supplies. While an active community is essential to the success of our public schools, the burden of providing essential supplies should not fall on the shoulders of parents and guardians alone. Many families simply cannot afford to do so. It is, therefore, our collective responsibility to ensure that our teachers and students have access to the resources they need to succeed. We urge you to consider allocating a recurring budget line item that will provide $350 per teacher in Johnston County Public Schools. Let us invest in our future leaders, our farmers, politicians, inventors, healthcare professionals, and workforce of tomorrow by providing them with the essential tools to thrive. We implore you to take swift action and give incentives back to our most significant workforce. Let us show our teachers that they are valued, appreciated, and respected for their vital role that they play in shaping the future of our community. Thank you for your attention to this urgent matter.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Susan Wilson. I'm from Kenley. Several of us are here today from Down Home, NC, to discuss a pressing issue affecting our country's education quality. As we all know, our teachers play a critical role in shaping our children's future. However, many of our dedicated teachers face a significant challenge in providing the necessary materials for their students. Johnston County teachers use a significant portion of their own salaries to purchase classroom supplies and materials. This issue affects not only our teachers' personal finances, but also directly impacts the learning experiences of our students. Teachers should not have to sacrifice their financial stability to provide the tools that their students need to succeed. Providing county teachers with funding designated explicitly for classroom supplies would greatly help alleviate this problem. These funds will purchase critical materials such as books, lab equipment, art supplies, and technology. This support would also allow our teachers to develop innovative and engaging lesson plans, further enhancing the learning experience for all our children. Investing in our teachers this way would send a powerful message about our community's commitment to education. It would show our teachers that we value their hard work and dedication, and we are willing to support them in every way possible. As concerned citizens, we strongly urge the county to consider implementing a program that would provide $350 to teachers with funds to purchase classroom supplies. The investment would not only benefit our teachers and students, but it would also positively impact the entire community by supporting a brighter future for Johnston County. You can help teachers do their best when you supply success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess out of the ordinary, I do want to make a comment. You can sit down.
Oh, sorry.
So I will say we agree that we do value our teachers, and they are hard workers and dedicated to our students in Johnston County. However, this board is not the one to be asking for funds for that. We provide what the county, I would consider what the school board requests. The request should be directed to the school board, not to us. So, and I know there's others here to speak to this same issue, but again, this board is not the one to be receiving this request. It should be to the school board. So I would ask those, since you took the time to come, for those who are here to speak to this, if you would stand up so we can see who all of you are.
I mean, if you don't want to hear anybody else, I just agree that this is the board to speak to. I'd be happy to explain why.
That's okay. If you want to speak to another issue, you're welcome to, but again, this is not the board that should hear direct requests for funding.
I also have public comment.
If you have some other topic to agree to speak to.
Not going to let other people speak.
I just said I would recognize the people here to address it, but there's no need to continue on with the same thing when this is not the correct board.
I disagree.
I'm sorry you disagree. Anybody else have any other public comments on another issue?
I mean,
If not, we will,
I would like for my member we're part of the chapter, and
if you, yeah, as long as it's on a different topic,
I have a,
so, Mr. Hall, I would just say, let's not push the limits.
yeah, it's fine. So I know you're all sitting there thinking, like you just said, you fund the Board of Education, that is the board we should be speaking to. You can't really dictate how the money is spent. However, this board, all of you sitting here, yourself included, you did set a precedent already that when you withheld money from our public schools, when you requested and required an anti-CRT policy to be enacted, that you have set the standard. So I know you can make this happen. You are the board to speak to about it. This is not something we want to go to the Board of Education about. This is not something we want to have them take their funds away from. We want the county to supply this to our county teachers. So that's why this is the board we need to speak to. All of you already voted to require the public schools to, you already said that you dictate how money is spent to the schools or how money is given to the schools when you enacted that.
We do not
anti-CRT
dictate
policy.
how the schools spend their money. So,
Okay. I disagree.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. What is Down Home NC? I'm just curious.
hello, how are y'all? My name is Elizabeth Lynn. I'm the regional organizer for Down Home NC, and we're a community group working to build our own power. We want to work with citizens to build up our leadership and address boards like you all and have a seat at y'all table. We think that we had things to. I'm sorry, y'all. This is my first public comment. I'm nervous. But we are representing ourselves and community members. We've taken time to speak with people, and we know that education was a pressing issue in Johnston County. And off of our data and research, a lot of teachers and parents spoke about having lack of resources in the schools, and we know that y'all have the ability to give more money to the school system. We know that they divvy it out themselves, but we were here to speak to y'all about allocating a line item more. I'm sorry, allocate. I'm sorry, I have a speech. But it's addressing something that y'all said not to. But that's what we are, and we're just speaking on community issues. I could talk with you more, Mr. Godwin, about our organization. I apologize, I'm nervous right now.
No, that's fine. I was just curious.
Because we were all prepared to speak on this matter, and we did our research, and we thought that we were in the right order and everything. So we wanted all of our comments to be heard. So.
Since you're here, let's talk and learn something, okay?
Okay.
We fund the Board of Education based on their budget request.
Right.
Whatever they send to us, and we don't care where they're buying pencils, papers, air conditions, buses, whatever. It should be in their budget in which we allocate to them.
Yeah.
Okay, they are a duly elected board, and they have the right to set their own budget. Now, when we funded them, and we set a precedence, and I agree with Mr. Hall, we set a precedence because we have funded them 100% for the last 2 years. Now, I can speak to it because I have kids in school. It's amazing, I know, but just deal with it.
You're fine.
I got kids at school, and I understand the problem, and I understand that I don't know who eats the copy and paper or where it goes or what they use it for, but coming close to the end of the year, they're going to be short again on that kind of stuff. So, their priority down the road there should be exactly what the first speaker spoke about, is that down the road, that should be their priority, in funding the teachers necessary.
Yes, our plan is to work with not only the county commissioners, but the Board of Education. We just wanted to let y'all be aware of our proposal.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, and certainly don't have deaf ears to what the problem is, but.
Oh, we know. We just want to express and highlight and bring awareness to the issue, so y'all we know that y'all hear it from our mouths.
Okay. But anyway, I appreciate what you're doing, and we agree that you look around and we need younger folks involved in what we're doing as far as leadership.
Yes.
And understanding of what we're doing in this county, and I appreciate personally.
No problem.
What
Yeah,
you do.
we're all about getting civic engagement and teaching people more. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And I think the school board is responsible to get their budget to us by May the 15th. So that's when we will get what your budget request is at that time. And again, not disparage any of the teachers, that we appreciate the effort they put in and the things that they have to do for our children, and in my case, grandchildren in the public schools. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I might add, I would be happy to meet with you at some point if you would like to. We could sit down and discuss. There's a lot of, you bring up a lot of good points, but the chairman is telling you the right thing. It is a school board decision. I asked a lot of those questions when I first became a county commissioner. I was going to fix the world, and I realized that there's some things we just can't fix, and that's why we have a Board of Education. So, thank you.
and I will say you're not the first ones. We had last year. We had a lady come to us with issues with TAs and bus drivers, so books. Yeah, so we get this on a fairly regular occasion. So, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Burris Richardson III. I live in Clayton. We appreciate your professionalism in telling us the right thing that we need to do. But as a board of the county commissioners, when we come up here and we don't know the right thing to do, the worst thing that you can do is huff, puff, and do the things that you're doing. That's very unprofessional. We're a young group and we're trying to learn. So that's all we ask. So we appreciate your guys' professionalism. Do better, please.
Okay. If you don't mind, would you, you did say your name and you were from Clayton. Okay, never mind, sorry. All right, anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm so excited to come up here and talk. Good evening. My name is Shakira Frazier, and I am a homeowner in Wilson Mills. So I also wanted to speak to the solution of proposing. I'm just going to keep it short for you guys, but I do want to speak to the solution of proposing that you add a reoccurring line budget of $350 per teacher to the school system so that they can buy supplies and stuff for our kids. I do have 2 kids that are in the school system, and I come from Wake County, so I know you guys can flex some muscle and maybe get something going where there's talking or the precedents that you guys have set. So just adding to what we have all said, just so you hear multiple people are very interested in it. And I'm speaking to it from someone who's more new to Johnston County. I came from Wake County, and I like Wake County schools. And I want Johnston County schools I want to love Johnston County schools. So if you guys can help me get my boys the best education possible, because right now I'm homeschooling, and I can't do it. Like, it's not something that the teachers deserve this extra money. They need the money because I myself spent a lot of money just in my homeschool classroom. I spent over $500 just to change the wallpaper and stuff, just to keep it very interesting. So if you guys could add something to the budget or find a way around, so that we can help our teachers, I would really appreciate it.
I can assure you the word is out because people do watch YouTube, and so the citizens are ones that can really make a difference.
Yeah. And Johnston County schools have done a really good job in upping what they've done in the past. Last time I went to a board education meeting, they were talking about how good the grades have gotten, and I want them to be better. I mean, Wake is taking teachers from this area because they pay more, and quite frankly, with the pay being better, that means they get better teachers. Let's give our teachers something to stay for so that our students can compete at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, were there any items via email? All right. Anybody have any other issues? I think everybody wound up speaking anyway, so if not, we will move on to the next item, which Chandra Farmer, our Utilities Director, will come forward and present on the Timothy G. Broom Water Treatment Plant Design Build project. So we'll leave it at that. That's a lot of words in there.
Yes. In November, the board authorized a contract and adopted a capital project budget for Phase 1 of our Timothy G. Broom Water Treatment Plant 14 to 18 million gallon a day design build expansion project. In addition to the technical services from the county's owner advisor, Phase 1 included several components that essentially get us to almost to our GMP, which is a guaranteed maximum price. That's the way these design build projects are structured. And at this time, we've been working with our consultant. We're at approximately getting really close to finishing up a 60% design of the project, and we anticipate our final GMP to be received in early June. And as you may recall, we're proposing to fund this project with revenue bonds, 2023 water and sewer revenue bonds that we would be selling. And the process is underway. We've been working with our financial consultants on this and our legal counsel, and we anticipate being able to sell those revenue bonds in July. However, you may also recall on this project we have a very aggressive project schedule to ensure that we can get this plant online and operational by the spring of 2025. So in order to maintain this aggressive schedule and couple that with delays in supplies and materials in the industry, we're recommending that we go ahead and proceed with some of the project components before we receive that final GMP for this project. It's a proposed early equipment and work package that includes some of these materials and equipment that we're going to need to get this project started that have long lead times on them, such as our filters, our generators, electrical switchgear. Electrical components have very long lead times right now, we have found with multiple projects. And also on this project, we are procuring the Claricone separate from the contractor. The county is required to purchase that on our own. So we're requesting a revised project budget that would allow the county to go ahead and commit to the contractor for this early work package and include the final design, the construction administration, and the total cost for that, which we already have, as the Phase 1 already includes $7 million, but this would be $24,777,417 that would be funded from the upcoming revenue bonds. We do have fund balance that would cover that if there were any problem for whatever reason with the revenue bonds. We could ensure this equipment were paid for and the contractor was compensated if for whatever reason we don't proceed in the future. We're requesting the board's approval to proceed with this early work package, the associated and the approval of the proposed revised project budget and approval of the capital project ordinance. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on this project.
We ordered the Claricones under an agreement we did earlier. They're on order now, right?
This will allow us to get them on order. The board previously approved us sole sourcing that component.
Okay.
Yep.
So the total, are we reaching maximum capacity? I was thinking it was 22 million, but it may be 18. Is the plants, are we pegged out at 18
Based
million?
on what we're allowed to withdraw from the river and what we can
withdraw.
see near term, 18 million gallons a day is really going to be our maximum treatment capacity at this plant site. And as we talk later on in the meeting, you'll understand where we feel like we should start investing our future funds for future water supply to sustain us long term.
But just to be straight, if the state doesn't grant us any more withdrawal from the river, this is our peak for this plant. This plant can
That's
have
correct,
no
at this
future
site.
expansions. Okay.
That's right.
No chance that this early component package would be obsolete or wrong by the time the final plans are in place?
No, this is standard equipment. This is necessary equipment for this.
Right. I don't see a problem.
I don't either.
You want to make that in form of a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve for staff to proceed with the equipment package Associated Construction Administration and Design Packages, and approves revised capital project budget, and adopt the capital project ordinance for the Timothy G. Broom Water Treatment Plant Design Build 14.18 million gallon per day expansion.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We know what you meant. I think that was,
Is she opposed?
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, pause next time. One
Yeah, I'm
beat.
gonna pause, yeah, okay. All right, the motion is approved. So, Ms. Farmer, I think you have another item up, the Dutchess Downs gravity sewer outfall revised capital project budget.
Yes, in June of '22, the board adopted a capital project budget for our Dutchess Downs Gravity Sewer Outfall Project. This was to start the preliminary project design and routing. It's a rather long outfall line that needed some investigation when we start looking at wetlands and property ownership as to where to best route the line. So the previous budget was adopted at $100,000. We're requesting a budget revision for this for the total complete design package through the end of construction. So that would be any help during construction, our final as-built drawings and everything. The final and also, I'm sorry, we also are requesting to revise the budget to include easement acquisition. So the proposed revised project budget we're requesting is $823,100. We're proposing to fund this from our wastewater system development fee capital reserve account.
So we're going to purchase the right-of-way, the easements, finish the design, and then we're going to add about $700,000 to the project, right?
That's correct. This will get us to the point of ready to bid the project. Once we bid the project for construction, we would come back and modify the project,
Based on
the budget
construction.
again, yes, with that amount.
Nobody else?
Any other questions?
Then I make a motion that we approve the revised capital project budget and associated budget revisions for the completed project design and easement acquisition for the Dutchess Downs Gravity Sewer Outfall revised capital project.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Now, what, just, I didn't hear.
Aye, yeah, aye, yeah.
I'm not doing it again, but
All right. I clearly got the signal over here to pause.
Yeah, we paused
All
for you.
right, motion is approved. All right. Ms. Farmer, I think you have some guests to introduce for our long-term water supply plan presentation.
I do. I am excited to say that we are finally at the point where we are ready to present the results and the findings of our long-term water supply plan. We actually started on this in late 2019. We've had a lot of changes in the county, we've really gone through a lot of projections and iterations to see where we need to be long-term. We've worked closely with our partners in the county to try to get these numbers where they need to be, make sure our projections are accurate so we can identify the right long-term water supply option. But we have with us tonight our team who has helped us with this project from Hazen and Sawyer. We have with us Tom Tant, Reed Palmer, and Karen Saunders, and also Kim Rainier from our office, our engineering manager. And I think Reed is going to lead us on the presentation.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here to talk about the county's long-term water supply plan. Again, my name is Reed Palmer. I work for Hazen and Sawyer. To give you a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about this evening so that you know where I'm headed. I'm going to go through a quick system overview. Chandra's already provided some of that overview that I expected I might need to provide. We will talk about future water supply needs to set the stage for where we think we're headed. Discuss some of the alternatives that we've looked at over the past several years, and go into detail on the lower Neuse intake and water treatment plant, which is the direction we think the county needs to take given the water supply needs that are forecasted for the county. And then we'll talk about some of the planning, phasing and the costs for that new supply and treatment. And then I'll turn it back over. Chandra, you're going to speak about financing when I get to the end. And then we can take discussion and questions throughout, of course. So our county's current system, as Chandra mentioned, you're probably going to max out the treatment at about 18 million gallons per day. And the reason for that is you're limited by the state at the moment to have a net withdrawal of a little bit over 15 million gallons per day. They know you may take about 17 out. You're going to put about 10% of that back in the river as a water treatment process discharge. Having a treatment plant capacity of 18 MGD was going to work out, help you meet some of the peak needs based on this 70 million gallons of raw water storage that you have between the river and the water treatment plant. So you can meet some higher needs above and beyond that 15.3 million gallons per day that you can take out of the river. The county also has purchase programs set with some of your neighbors. This map up here shows, I believe there's 12 connections around the county and then a couple of connections with the town of Smithfield as well. That provides a good portion of the county supply, and the interconnections provide reliability and resiliency for the county's water supply system. Well, I guess I should cover the current purchase contracts total about 11 million gallons per day if they are used in complete full capacity. Some of those, in particular, the city of Raleigh is growing rapidly as well. They're not going to be able to continue to supply the 2.5 million gallons per day, so that will decline a bit to about 7 million gallons per day in 2050, which is our planning horizon. This map here is a map that was produced for the Triangle Water Partnership, and I'm just putting it up here to indicate that in addition to the connections that are adjacent to the county system, the whole Triangle region is interconnected, and this again provides additional supply resiliency and reliability for the county. You can move water from one system to the other. This is a great long-term benefit available to the county. So let's talk now about future water supply needs. This chart up here shows that the total need that the county has is going to grow from what was a little under 15 million gallons per day in 2020 to between 30 and 35 million gallons per day in 2050. And the chart breaks down into three categories. There's a portion for the county-operated water districts, that's at the bottom in the darker blue. The county's wholesale contracts, excluding the town of Clayton, and then the green at the top is the town of Clayton, and we're highlighting that because that is the, of course, largest town in the county and has the largest water supply need that the county needs to meet outside of the water districts that the county is responsible for providing retail supply to. When we look at that same chart and factor in what the town of Clayton's fraction of that is, it's about 30% at present, and it's going to grow upwards to 45 to 50%, we think, toward the end of the planning period. The town of Clayton's responsible for about half of the growth in water supply need in the county. I'm also going to mention maximum day demand because at present the county doesn't have raw water storage, so you need to be able to meet the maximum day needs from that withdrawal from the river and from your purchased supplies. And that need is growing from a little under 20 million gallons per day to somewhere between 45 and 50 million gallons per day in 2050. Again, the bands show the same components, the dark blue being the county retail water districts. The lighter blue are all the bulk sales to other water systems within the county. Also includes the town of Fuquay-Varina, which is outside of the county. And then the green band is to the town of Clayton. And again, that maximum day need attributed to the town of Clayton is growing again from a little under 30% at present to between 40 and 50% at the end of the planning period. So we talked in the last set about what our current supplies are. We've got the water treatment plant, the Timothy G. Broom water treatment plant, and the purchases from your neighboring systems. When we look at how that growth happens in the future, again, the green line is equivalent to the top of the line in the chart from the last slide. The dotted line is the county's existing water treatment plant near Wilson Mills. And then the darker blue line above that is the addition of the purchase contracts that the county maintains with other systems. The red shows either a surplus if it's above the zero line or a deficit. The deficit could show up as soon as 3 or 4 years from now. And it grows to about 24 million gallons per day by 2050. So this is a lot of need that we need to figure out a solution to and where it's going to come from. So that is the gap that we're looking to solve in the next 25 to 30 years. So if there's no questions so far.
So is that, I was going to say, the 24 projected, is that the maximum for
That's a
one day?
maximum day. And the average day need is around 12 million gallons per day. It's 10 to 14. There's a range.
Okay.
The town of
Read that
Clayton
is
gave us a
also
range.
With no finished water storage, or limited finished water storage.
Limited finished water storage in the system. Right. I haven't counted, we haven't counted the benefit of that, and I don't think you would want to draw your water tanks down and have people on low pressure just to, plan to meet the need
But
from the
if we
water.
didn't build any more finished water storage, that's current. What your assumptions are based on current finished water storage, right?
Yes, and
But we're not using any of that because it's, like you said, it would draw it down, you'd get contamination.
we're
and everything
hoping you
else.
don't have to eat into
Stir
that
up the
to meet
system,
that
we don't want to
maximum
do
day
that.
need. Correct. So the next topic that we're going to talk about are what are the alternatives to meet this need that we've been looking at. So we've got a list here. Some of them were short-term needs, which are generally purchases, increasing the size of the purchase from other systems, or new purchases. Given that the need is 24 million gallons per day, there is no neighbor that can supply that need. We might be able to get a little bit to get beyond short-term supply gaps, but none of your neighbors is going to be willing to provide 24 million gallons per day. So we've got to look at some capitally intensive long-term options. Those are listed 5 through 11. The first thing that we looked at was expanding the withdrawal at the existing water treatment plant. The state has told us that based on the low flow determination at the water treatment plant intake in Wilson Mills, that between the county's withdrawal and the town of Smithfield's withdrawal, you're not going to get any more water there without doing an in-stream flow study. You can do an in-stream flow study, but you won't know what the result is going to be for a number of years, and there's no guarantee that you would successfully be permitted for an additional withdrawal, and certainly not 24 MGD worth.
And you got to also worry about seasonal conditions on that too. When you do your studies, you're going to get each year's going to be a varying. Nothing's going to be consistent.
We have to contend with droughts and whatever hydrology that we have to deal with, correct. Well, let me talk about some of the other ones, but we're going to land on number 6, which is an intake further down in the Neuse River. Before I get there, let's talk about some of the others. So there was an option to look at another withdrawal on the Neuse River where the Swift Creek and the Middle Creek come in. We asked the USGS for a low flow determination there. This is a big determinant of whether the state's going to let you make a withdrawal there. It was an unfavorable determination from the standpoint of garnering enough supply to meet your long-term needs. So that option fell by the wayside. Potable reuse may be a long-term option. You've got public relations issues to deal with there, and honestly, the fact that you need 24 million gallons per day, which is almost twice what you're able to supply on a maximum day now, means you can't just recycle that and get another 24 million gallons per day. So that may be something that folks come back to in the future as the technology improves, but right now the supply is not there to make that one work. We looked at combining the withdrawal at the existing water treatment plant with some off-stream storage. That looked possible when the demand forecast was lesser than it is now, but with the growth rate we're anticipating, we can't meet the 24 million gallon per day need. We've had discussions with the city of Wilson. They've got their Buckhorn Reservoir that's really, honestly, right near the county line in the northeastern part of the county. But again, 24 million gallon per day need is beyond what that reservoir can supply. It's not impossible that that reservoir could be expanded, but that requires an agreement with the city of Wilson. It would be, you're still transmitting water quite a distance. It would be a very expensive solution, and you would be dealing with other political entities to make it happen.
Reed, on the potable reuse, the state only allows 20% of our discharge to be reused, to be brought back in their water plant. They allow that now. I don't think anybody's doing it in the state.
That's correct.
But with the potable reuse, that's not going to get us anywhere near, because like I say, our plant's going to be discharging 13 million gallons a day. We need 24. That's not going to help us. But have not we had some conversations going on with the quarries, the new quarry and the old? I mean, I know we own the old quarry, but I'm talking about the quarry. They've got one now that they're going to be abandoning in the next 10 to 15 years right across the road. Have we had conversations with them about how would that impact? Have we even looked at how that would impact?
So I can defer specifics about the discussions on acquiring that quarry to Chandra, but I would say that because it's located near the town of Princeton, we're planning to make use of it as part of this alternative 6, the lower Neuse intake. So I'm actually going to talk about it in a few slides. But with respect to the reuse, you're absolutely correct that the current law allows combining reclaimed water up to 20%, but you've got to blend it with a traditional supply. And you're absolutely right that when you can only get 13 or 15 MGD out of your current supply, that you can't multiply that by 0.2 and get to another 24 MGD of supply.
And there's a reason why nobody's doing it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's because the transmission's going to be a high dollar thing, too.
That's correct. The cost of transmission, I think, it makes reuse under the current regulation or the law very difficult to make it cost effective. So the next set of slides, we're going to talk about this lower Neuse intake and water treatment plant alternative in more detail. So, and before I go into it, I want to remind the board that the county conducted an environmental assessment at this site back in 2009, and the North Carolina Division of Water Resources provided you with a finding of no significant impact, which is basically a thumbs up. They thought this was a good idea for a supply. It turned out at that time that it seemed maybe too expensive to proceed with it then. We're looking at it now. We think it's got a robust supply, which, given the amount of demand that we need to satisfy, is really a key thing.
This is the site on Richardson Bridge Road.
Correct.
Yeah. Is this relevant now because of more tributaries coming into the river between here and there?
In terms of the amount of supply that's available? Yeah, and I've got a graphic or two that we can talk about that. So I know that was something that staff was asked.
Right.
So I will get to that. So just to orient everybody to where this is. So indeed, this is an intake that would be placed all on the Neuse River, just upstream of where Richardson Bridge Road crosses the river. And then the quarries that we were discussing a minute ago are to the north on the slide. There's the site that the county has acquired that's got about 800 million gallons of storage in it. And then there's the active quarry that the county hopes that it might be able to acquire in the future a little bit to the southeast, both of which are northeast of the town of Princeton. And then, of course, there's on this slide here, and we'll talk about it more in a minute, a raw water line that would connect the two that would allow water to be sent to the new water treatment plant, as well as to be stored in one of the two quarries.
So that would be raw water into storage. We would store raw water into quarries.
Correct.
And then take it out for treatment as you treated it.
Yes. Okay. And I believe the option would be you could pump that raw water straight to the water treatment plant as well.
Will we take any water from the Little River?
No, that's not part of the current plan. They looked at that in the environmental assessment in 2009. It wasn't received favorably. I think there's a lot of environmental interest on the Little River. And actually, in the amount of supply is far less than what you can get out of the Neuse River. So what you see on this slide here are the components that we think the county will have to capitalize to make use of this alternative. There would be an intake on the Neuse River, a raw water pump station at the same location to pump that water through about 12 miles of raw water transmission up to the water treatment plant site, which is in the northern part of the slide, and to put water into the quarry storage when the quarry storage is depleted, a pump station to take water out of the quarry, and then you need some finished water transmission to get the treated water from the water treatment plant site up to where most of the population growth is anticipated in the county and where the water would be consumed and used. So those are the major components that this alternative entails. The way that we've looked at it from a phasing and a cost estimating perspective, we've broken it down into 4 different phases. What this chart shows is again, in dark blue is the current supply from the Timothy G. Broom water treatment plant. The gray band is what you're purchasing from your neighbors. The orange line, of course, is what your maximum day need is. And the green is the supply that we think that you need from this new source, what we're calling the Lower Neuse water treatment plant, an intake and water treatment plant. So the way we've got it broken down, and it doesn't need to be this way, but we did it in 4 phases. The reason we broke it into phases is growth is not something that you can predict with certainty, and we think it behooves the county to break it up into phases so that you don't overinvest at any one point in time and leave a bunch of resources stranded if the demand doesn't show up, or you can then delay a phase 2 or 3 if demand growth is occurring more slowly. But if it happens as quickly as forecast, then there's going to be a successive series of phases where that water treatment plant is expanded. The way we're showing it now is that there would be a 12 MGD treatment plant built in phase 1, followed by successive phases of 6 million gallons per day for a final treatment capacity of 30 million gallons per day.
What is the project we have in our CIP now, the $500 million project? Is that phase 1 and 2 or phase 1? Is it,
Since we've received these numbers, we've updated our CIP and our current financial model, and that's not been presented all back and forth yet, but it's broken in our CIP now into three components: water supply, water treatment, and finished water. So it'd be like raw water, treatment plant, and finished water supply. You'll see that in the next few months as we start presenting more updated financial model. And
Okay.
as we've updated that CIP. Because that CIP for 22, we didn't have all these numbers.
okay,
That was the number we threw out there to get that placeholder in there. The best estimate we had
good,
at that time.
okay.
If we move forward, the transmission from the 12 million gallon a day treatment facility we built initially, could we not, I mean, the 16-inch main that's all to enter, we've been talking about southern parts of it to Pine Level and various, would we build a entirely new one, or would we try to set the county where this Princeton area would take care of this end and maybe up to a point with some interconnecting capabilities, and the Timothy Broom take care of everything up in the Clayton, Archer Lodge, that general area?
So we would look at phasing that to the extent possible, but at some point, certainly we're gonna need
You're gonna need to go.
supply that way. So our modeling would determine, how we could best phase that. We would maximize the use of those large water mains we already have in place, but we know based on the modeling that is certainly gonna require additional larger mains from Princeton back to the western part of the county. What we have would not be totally sufficient. There's certainly gonna
And
be
they're also kind of, the route of them is atrocious. You could get a more direct line probably.
Right, but we would look at that closely as we design each phase and know what the projections are at that time and those near-term projections to determine how we phase this.
Reed, you were talking about a 12-mile transmission line from that lower Neuse River. What side would that be, the 16-inch main you were talking about?
We don't really know. You've got it sized.
The raw water component, so we were looking at ways to make this initial investment in phase one more feasible. And so the way we've got it cost out here for you this evening is that it would be broken into a 30-inch pipeline in phase one and another 30-inch pipeline in phase two. It's not always the ideal way to build pipelines. They don't lend themselves like water treatment plants to expansion right next to each other, but because of the cost of ductile iron pipe, especially the larger diameters these days, and the fact that transportation costs have gone up so much, we were looking at trying to reduce the cost of that first phase and broke it into two, so there would end up being two parallel 30-inch lines, one in phase one and one in phase two. And we looked at it as a 42-inch line, just all at once, and I think that was going to cost, it was like 30 to 50 million more than.
Ductile iron, I know, I'm trying to remember. You get older, you don't remember as well. But the largest diameter of C905 PVC, would that not suffice here?
Generally, when we go 16-inch and larger, we go with ductile iron on our water system because of the high pressures and
But historically, do we have many more breaks with the PVC C905?
Well,
So since we went to 905.
well, I don't know that we've had as many, but we don't have large pipeline, like I said, when we get to 16
Chandra,
inch, we've
I hate to do this. Could you move over this? Can you sit at the microphone where, behind Rick? Yeah, I don't think the folks who are watching can hear you. And Commissioner Braswell, I think if you lean up a little bit when you talk, they hear you better too, so.
Get us all straight now here.
Yeah.
So we don't have any 16-inch in our water distribution system that's PVC. We've always had a standard of once we get to 16-inch, we go to ductile iron. We've had 12-inch PVC that's not 900 has been a real problem.
And I realize that, but
yeah, generally.
most of the other towns and counties that I've had experience with and Tom, you may be able to help us out some of your experience. I know you've been around longer than I have. But the C905 is a much better quality pipe. And I just don't know what the size is, if they'd accommodate the sizes you need. But
Right, and we put that in our sewer
That's going to be
system.
significantly cheaper than the ductile iron, is what I'm just getting
Yeah.
at.
We've put that in our sewer system. We just have not gone to plastic pipe for that large line in our
Well, it took
water
us forever to
distribution
get-
system.
so
I don't, our engineers may have a recommendation on that.
Yeah. You can come on, yeah.
Yeah, I would just say that, I think when it comes time for design, sizing, restraint, there's gonna be a lot of factors on what would be a good product. We've got a project that's under design right now that's very similar to this project right here. And interestingly enough, because of the, PVC is an oil product, the PVC pricing
It's about as high as the ductile.
is just about as high as the ductile. So it's really not the competitive advantage
But
in
that's-
these larger sizes as we used to see back.
Joe, you and I have seen that. We've seen that PVC get so close to the ductile iron cost, and then suddenly you have this large spread that grows again.
And it might go the other way before this goes in the ground, and we can talk about it, if it's an acceptable product. But right now, as far as budgeting goes,
About tit for tat.
we're where we need to be to cover the base.
Okay. I was gonna say, before we design this thing right here, right
Well, we
now,
changed 100.
let's get back to the long-range plan here.
So we are getting into the discussion of cost, which is where I'm headed next, so I think we're moving in the right direction. So again, I mentioned the size of the phases, so I won't go over that again. But what I'm showing here are the capital costs for each phase in the dollar year indicated, and the rough cost per gallon to provide that additional treatment capacity. So you know, phases 1 and 2 are expensive because those phases include that raw water transmission line, which you don't, by phases 3 and 4, you've got the raw water transmission in place. Phases 1 and 2 also include significant amounts of finished water transmission to get the water up to the more populous parts of the county. Phases 3 and 4 are mostly focused on water treatment plant capacity. So when we talk about taking those costs and turning them into present worth dollars, that is a total of 30 million gallons per day of treatment plant capacity, as well as the associated transmission infrastructure. Construction costs over $800 million. Total capital costs, again, that's going to add engineering, permitting, your easements for all your pipelines. Looks to be a little over $1 billion in present worth dollars. And again, that dollar per gallon per day capacity is about $34 per gallon.
I see you've got phase 1 in 2027. Is that something you think will happen?
And I should mention, that's midpoint of construction. So yes, and that's aggressive. That's moving right along into DER after we're done with this long-term water supply plan and getting it designed. I believe the way we had it shown coming online was in 2030. That's where that green line goes up on this slide here. 2030 is when it would come online. So life cycle costs, we've got a slide with that in it as well. This includes a number of components, including O&M on your existing water treatment plant. I do want to mention that our treatment plant costs for the lower Neuse water treatment plant include the type of treatment that we think would be necessary to deal with the new PFAS regulations that are coming out that the EPA has proposed. So it's going to be a more expensive treatment process. We don't have included in here upgrades at the Timothy G. Broom plant to cover that. So that, I guess that, dark blue might need to, well, expand, we might need another category for upgrades at the existing water treatment plant to cover that. But we think we've got a general idea of what it would take to provide that level of treatment. Again, we don't know exactly where the final regulation's going to fall, but we are aware it's coming our way. It's going to affect everybody. And so that would be in that middle blue wedge at the bottom of water treatment plant capital costs. If there's no questions on this, I'll wrap up by discussing a little bit more about why we picked this option as opposed to some of the other options and some of the supply resiliency that we think this system provides. I know there's been some discussion about should we go to the Cape Fear, could we buy more water from other neighboring utilities. Of course, most of the county and most of the residents here are in the Neuse River Basin, and if you go get large quantities of water, more than 2 million gallons per day, you've got to apply for an interbasin transfer. That's a several-year process. And the Cape Fear is actually, there's a lot of competition for that water. We do planning in all of these basins, and Jordan Lake is over 90% allocated. City of Sanford is expanding, rapidly. They're going to end up in the future approaching that low flow limit themselves, where they would have to go after an in-stream flow study. Now that's a ways out, but the point is there's a lot of folks that want to use water in the Cape Fear. We think the county is in a great position to utilize the Neuse River, which is a tremendous supply right within the county. What this slide shows is in the green area is the watershed that drains to your current Timothy G. Broome water treatment plant. It's about 1,180 square miles. The dotted blue and white shaded area is the additional drainage area that you would pick up at the new intake site, and it's another 500 square miles of drainage. The USGS has provided low flow determinations for both sites, which I've put in the boxes in the slide here. There's an additional roughly 30 million gallons per day, which happens to be, that's about 20% of this low flow determination at the new site, which is how much we think the DWR will let the county pull out at that site. It's about 30 million gallons per day. They're also willing to let you do higher rate withdrawal when there's high flows in the river. If I compare that to, we talked about the Little River, making use of that source. So it has about half the drainage at Princeton as the additional area that would supply the lower Neuse intake, but the amount of low flow that is there is almost negligible. It's a much drier watershed, and you're not going to be permitted to withdraw nearly as much water there, despite the fact that it is slightly closer to the site. But the Neuse River is got a lot of flow. It's a reliable and resilient source. It's in the river basin where your population is growing. You're going to face a lot less regulatory headway getting that approved than other sources that would be outside the basin.
You wouldn't have to do an IBT to get into the Little River Basin, though, would you?
To supply water? To withdraw water from there? No, I don't believe so. That's on this side of the boundary. Yeah.
Did I understand you to say it takes 7 years for
to get out
in the basin?
No, it's several. I'm sorry, several years,
okay.
several years to get approval. I hope it's not 7 because we got other folks we're working with who are
just saying,
seeking those, and yeah. Thanks for asking that question. It's multiple years for sure, but hopefully not 7. So I'm going to hand it back to Chandra to talk about funding and financing. And I thank you all for your time this evening.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reed.
So we saw some big numbers. So the big question is, what does that look like, and how do we fund that? We know the county wants to continue to develop and grow. If we want to continue to add residents, we've got to be able to meet those demands. As I think Chairman Lauder asked a while ago about the existing project in our water and sewer capital improvements plan, that 22 plan does have a placeholder, a line item in there for future water supply, and that was before we had these numbers, which are certainly a little bit more detailed than when we prepared that plan. So our first step will be implementing these numbers back into that capital improvements plan. Then when we do that, one of the components of that capital improvements plan is looking at how we fund these projects. How do we fund it? Is it revenue bonds? Are there options for USDA funding, which is generally a longer term type loan? SRF loan, WIFIA funding, which we decided not to move forward with that on our wastewater treatment plant project. That's something that can be longer term funding through WIFIA, but you've got to get LGC approval for that, and they're not generally, they generally don't look favorable about longer term financing on utility projects like this. So certainly those are going to be considerations as we put this in our modeling. And of course, in the past, and as we move forward, I think growth paying debt service, growth pay for growth, is something we have tried to do to the best that we can through our system development fees and our capacity fees. That's what those fees are for. Those specific system development fees that we collect go to a specific account that can only be used for projects to create new capacity for the county, whether it be transmission capacity or treatment capacity. It's only for new capacity type projects. So it can also be debt service for those projects. It doesn't have to be upfront capital, but it can be debt service for those types of projects. So that's certainly going to be a critical item as we go through the financial modeling, is looking at those system development fees. We have out right now, we have updated our system development fee analysis, and it's on our website for public review and update. We have a 45-day review period for that. So that's out there now, and at the end of that 45-day period, we'll have a public hearing here, which would be June 5th with the board, where I'll be presenting that analysis to you, and you can kind of see what that looks like, what those system development fees look like. That includes this project. It includes the numbers that we have available to us now. Certainly for water supply, it approximately doubles the current system development fee. So our current system development fee for residential development is $2,750 per lot or per home. The new fee is almost $5,000 based on the current analysis. Again, it's under public comment. There could be things that could change in the model, but it's just under $5,000 per lot. That would be that upfront one-time fee for new construction. The other thing when we talk about growth paying for growth is much of our usage is from our bulk customers, and we have bulk capacity fees for the towns that purchase capacity from the county, and that would be another means where we ensure growth pays for growth, or growth pays debt for new capacity projects like this. We would have to continue to evaluate those capacity fees, and we do that typically in conjunction with the system development fees. The other thing to recognize, which Reed pointed out, about 50% of the future capacity almost is for growth demands that the town of Clayton anticipates. So we have talked with Clayton about the project and how we move forward. We've talked about some type of partnership agreement, some kind of financing where they finance the portion that they would need, their capacity portion. The county finances our capacity portion. We'll be having some more conversations at a staff level with them on what that looks like, what we could, what kind of arrangement options might be available to bring back to the board to present that information. And then, of course, all of this information put together is where we are right now with our financial updates that are underway. We have Willdan Financial Services. They're the ones who have done our system development fee update. They're also right now working on our rate model update, which will include this project with these numbers, with some assumptions. And that includes this updated capital improvements plan. And we anticipate to have their numbers. They've been working really hard even this weekend. We anticipate having those numbers in May to be able to come back and present to the board a comprehensive review of our updated capital improvements plan, our system development fee analysis, and what our rates would look like long term. So you can see how this project, coupled with all of our other project needs, what that looks like for our customers in the future. And again, like I said, I think that would be, hopefully that would be May to June timeframe. They'll have it completed in May, might be June till we're able to actually present that. And we are open to any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Ms. Farmer or the team from Hazen?
I have a couple.
Fire away.
Chairman. Chandra, you talked about system development fees paying, significant amount. All right, I'm pretty sure that the retail rate, and you said you were going to evaluate the rate, but I feel pretty sure the retail rate's going to increase with this, right? So I'm talking about an increase for all customers.
Likely there will be, yes. We try to utilize those system development fees to the extent possible to have growth pay for growth. But, certainly we can anticipate there will be rate increases for existing customers and new customers over time, not only for new construction, but to be able to meet rules and regulations and additional treatment technologies that we'll have to implement in our existing system, and to account for rising chemical fees, fuel prices, cost of materials and supplies. So yes, unfortunately, there will be anticipated rate increases, and we'll have a better idea of what that'll look like, short-term and long-term, when we get that study back.
I'd be really interested in seeing that in regard to, we're talking about 2045 and out, and so, I have a concern about whether actually the growth is paying for the growth, but I can understand also the alternatives of supplies and everything else that is impacted on the rate other than just this.
Right.
Okay? So thank you.
All right, any other questions?
I think I've asked my share.
Have you? I did have a couple on the purchase options, purchase program we had at the start. Is that all? I know I had a list and limits of what we have in the agreement. Is that like all available, or is there conditions in there that it's not likely we would ever see, picking a number, 80% of that, or could we see 100% of our purchases maxed out?
So that would depend on what our max day looks like. I think our current projected max day is just under 20 million gallons a day, around 19 million gallons a day. I think that was the max day projection. So with 14 million gallons a day at our water treatment plant, and then 11 million gallons a day in purchase capacity, it seems like we have an excess there, but also we have to consider max days can occur. It depends on what's going on with our other neighbors.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at is,
So
what is the likelihood that,
Right.
that it's just going to be us on a max day that we would see?
Everybody have a max day.
Yeah.
Right, and that's certainly that is a possibility. That is something that could happen. And when we get to those points, that is where we start looking at conservation measures, voluntary conservation measures, and mandatory conservation measures to bring that peak down so that we can meet that with what we've got available.
Okay. Yeah, and I know we talked about the Cape Fear as a possibility. To me, that's at least that's somewhere different, another source that we may look to. But I guess the other thing for the team is, what are, well, let me back up to this one. So the finding a no significant impact in 2009, have there been any changes or any proposed legislation out there that would make that better or worse since 2009, or can we assume we should have which I know I'm not, this is not even the right answer, but we assume we can have somewhat of the same path forward on that.
I may ask Reed to speak on that, but
Okay.
I would mention if there, you know, there have been likely, I think, some additional like endangered species mentioned
Right.
and all. So I'm certain there would probably be some environmental studies that have to be updated when we start talking about any kind of endangered or threatened species, but Reed might have a better
Okay.
response.
I would just add to that the state legislature got rid of the SEPA process some number of years ago. So this site should not have to go through an environmental assessment again. We met with the DWR back in August of last year, and they looked fairly favorably about this. They asked us to do some additional modeling and write a memo to submit to them, and we're in the process of finishing that now. And they basically said they could write us a letter to approve the withdrawal after that. The EA that was done in 2009 would be an attachment to it. So we're hoping that the conditions are favorable right now, that we could get that withdrawal approved.
Okay, and then I guess the final question for me are, what are the surprises that may be out there? I know there may be discharge limit changes. I'm hearing things that there may be some IBT changes. Is there anything that you see out there, not just go straight really good that's going to be helpful, or really, and I know you mentioned PFAS and all that, which we don't know the answer to that yet, but is there anything on the other end that would drive the cost of this way up, that from a legislative standpoint, not from materials increases that are beyond our DEQ's control?
Yeah, that's
a big question for you
a
there.
tough question to answer. I'm not sure I want to be on the record and have to look at this answer again in 10 years, but certainly the contaminants of emerging concern, which PFAS are part of, is something that all treatment facilities are concerned about. We're trying to anticipate what those regulations are going to look like. We've got granular activated carbon units assumed as part of the cost of the new water treatment plant that we're hoping will be able to address the limits for PFAS as well as a number of other contaminants of emerging concern. So hopefully we've got that covered. Again, it's going to depend on where EPA sets that regulatory limit in the end, is that how big those units need to be, how often you've got to recharge them, and whether you need other processes in here like advanced oxidative processes and UV treatment and that sort of thing that would add to the cost. But at this point, we're hoping that with granular activated carbon filtration units that we're taking a big step toward covering ourselves from the cost estimating standpoint.
I've got an easier question.
All right.
If we have a withdrawal location in the lower Neuse, then we've got a discharge between our two withdrawal locations. Is there any interconnecting relationship that's a limiting factor there?
So the regulations generally state that when you get a water supply watershed set up, that you want to have discharges more than 10 miles upstream. And I believe it was associated with the 2009 EA. There is already a water supply watershed in place for the lower Neuse intake, which is another thing that's going to facilitate that.
Right.
I think additional discharges in the future, certainly the intake and the fact that a water treatment plant's there is going to take precedence. Again, the water supply watershed designation is in place at present, so I would believe any new discharge would have to take that into consideration.
Right.
All right, any other questions? If not, thank you for the presentation, and I guess we'll look at this being incorporated into future presentations with the CIP and other budgetary issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Reed.
Next up, we have Adrian O'Neill, our Parks, Open Space and Greenways Director, to bring a presentation on open space grant funds grant fund allocations and the recommendations for those.
I'm gonna turn this over to Austin, our grants coordinator for parks, and he's gonna take this one for me.
All right. Good evening, Austin.
Good evening, Commissioners.
evening.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Good. Good.
Good, good. So, I want to come forward, talk about the 2023 Johnston County Open Space Fund. This year we had 23 projects. And I guess just start with that. You know, that is the fund that comes from fee and lieu, and also from open space that we were dedicated through development, residential units. So we had 23 projects this year, 14 different organizations, municipalities. We had in total $710,442. That was the total funding. That includes some supplemental county funding that would come from the open space fund from the county or from our department. That total was $157,000 that would be supplementing towards the organizations and municipalities. In total, we would like to approve these. I think everyone has it before them. We had a couple organizations, municipalities that did not apply. So we are anticipating that we might pull some more funding from the budget in the future to supplement these people that weren't ready for the 5% match or just didn't have a project in mind. All in all, most of the accounts were used up, which is a good thing. That means that we're getting recreation out there and getting people new either capital projects or land purchases. So with that, I wanted to request approval to adopt the recommendations, and I'll take any questions if y'all have any.
Any questions? So help me remember that. So this is from fee and lieu within the school district boundaries, which in some of the cases, and I don't see Clayton on here, but Clayton's they collect their own fee and lieu, so we would have some limited area outside of Clayton.
Correct.
And I'm assuming Smithfield, Selma, that same situation.
Correct.
Okay.
And there was a couple. Clayton included was the one that their boundaries just don't overlap with county planning, so that's where they kind of come to play.
So we're spending the fees, with the exception of about $158,000 from the school district that they were collected in.
Correct.
Okay.
And we did have a range. The highest one was about $3 million. That included a land acquisition and a construction of a community center, which is in Princeton. And the lowest one was $2,500. So those are the total estimated costs throughout.
All right. Any other questions?
Dog parks, does that fall within the purview of this open space?
I'm sorry, say it again, Mr.
Dog parks.
Dog parks? Yeah. Pine Level is doing a dog park.
Yeah, I see that. I just wonder if that's the appropriate intent of the money. Does that make sense?
I would think so. From having been involved in the first one in Clayton, that it was amazing that how that becomes a social interaction, not only for the dogs, but for the dog owners. And so there is a lot of folks, and I dare say when I go by that, anytime there's always at least one person there. So I think from my perspective, I would say that's probably.
I don't think I would.
And it's really not a lot to it other than fence and some water.
I wouldn't tell somebody like Miss Kim that her dog.
I'm a dog lover, but I just raised the question.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go down Second Street or Third Street down here on the left, it's like a regular park down there. They have all, I mean, it's a big dog park.
Yeah, dog parks are definitely a major component for park facilities in general. I can see how it's a little bit questionable, but it does provide a passive recreation for people, whether it's not active. It's giving people a social place to come together and take their kids to the playground or whatever comes with that.
The cats hadn't protested yet.
Cats have not protested yet.
Yeah, I wanted to see equal opportunity for cat parks.
You never know.
I would ask the same question about the community center. Is that going to be a sports-based, recreational-based community center?
Is that the one in Princeton
yes,
you're talking about? So the funding we're sending towards them is towards reimbursement for the land acquisition. The community center will have recreational components outdoors. It'll have a playground. This will be on the grounds. It'll have a playground, an amphitheater, and I think another component, just general open space and some trails. Interior, I think, would be like a library, meeting space, and
The mayor showed us.
Yeah, I remember the,
It's the same community park.
it's the community center.
Community center.
Yeah.
I think it probably is.
it is.
From what I understand, they purchased the land, which I think came out to $223,000 for those two parcels.
This is for the new community building.
In Preston.
And just curious, was that $66,000 for those two, was that all the fee and lieu collected in that district?
Yes.
They had for those two, because they had Princeton Little Tar Heels and
Yep.
Princeton.
Okay. All right. If there's not any discussion, I hear a motion to approve.
I move that we approve it as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Aye.
She's there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, all right.
Appreciate it.
Motion is
Thank
approved,
you.
thank you.
Have a great night.
All right, next up, Mr. O'Neill, are you going to take this one? On the
I want to take this one
Parks and
for a few
Recreation Trust
seconds
Fund
anyway.
grant, okay?
As you may remember, back in early 2022, we started on a process of doing a master plan for the Booker Tract or the Cleveland area regional park, Johnston County Regional Park. And that did include the old school site, which is managed by GCAA at the time, but it's county property, and also included the 80 acres that were purchased at the corner of Matthews and Palenka Road. Through the last year, we have worked on that with Stewart Incorporated and Terry Naranjo. And I'm going to have Terry come up now, and he's going to go through the plan. And then we'll talk a little more when you have questions, but he's going to cover it thoroughly.
All right, thank you.
I was going to say hi to Chairman Lauder, but...
It's all right, you can go ahead. You can carry on. That's fine. Yes, sir.
Good to see you this evening. Thank you for having us here. It's good to be with you. I'm going to go through the plan. My understanding is that some of you all have had a chance to review it and look at it. So in the interest of time, I'll go through things that things you may already know. I won't necessarily stay on, but the new things you will have a chance to reflect upon. So you'll see here, this is the report, what you're looking at here. Obviously, it's nearly 100 pages long, so we won't go through everything. But I will start out with some acknowledgments, and just by saying that y'all picked the right guys when you picked Adrian and Austin to be in charge of your greenways and open space. They are champions, as you know, for that effort, and for what it really needs in the county. You really have within them they've been great to work with. In addition to the steering committee, which you see here, Mr. Lauder, part of that. Good to see you again. Very involved process. So the definition of the project, as Adrian described, we have the two sites, but this really does set the stage for the first county park that will be hopefully a model from which future parks can be guided. You see yourself there, the design team. We also have Maiwa Alabi here that can help answer some questions. I'm here on behalf of Stewart tonight. Looking at the planning context, there were plans that happened prior to our involvement, and this effort was really looking at ways to build upon that effort and understand how to take the good work that has been done previously and move it into the forward. As you can see, the location here, you're all familiar with this location. It's an important site. it'll, like I said, hopefully be that guide that serves as a model for the future parks that come after it. And as from hearing the water conversation, the people that are coming, there's people that are coming, you know it. And it's going to be important that these people are served in this way. So there's the process that we went through, basically the existing conditions, community engagement, all the way through where we are. We did have some community engagement that was helpful and useful. You can see we met in person twice, and then online we had a survey. We had over 700 respondents, so that was some great input that happened there. Where people were from, you may recognize your contributions there. So when we did the community engagement, things that rose to the top are things you might imagine. Open space. It's lacking. All the development that's happening and it's getting gobbled up. That's something that was really a highlight that we feel like was able to be accomplished here. And you see all the different uses that people had requested. As it turns out, between the two sites, I think we actually hit all these items.
Dog park, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we died in dog park.
So here you have the first meeting happened in July, and then later on in September. And what I'm going to go through now is some of the context. A lot of this you would know, obviously, having a long history with the site, but there's a rich history that we wanted to at least acknowledge and capture with active recreation on the complex site, and then the Booker track and how it came to be, and you know, Dr. Cooker and in the site, and Denton, Mr. Lee and others were involved in the acquisition of that property. Some of the things you're also maybe very aware of is the circulation, and that's one of the things that we had to deal with first and foremost. So you'll see that it's disconnected, and then that connection to Cleveland Road is really something that was primary concern in how to deal with that. Topography, as you can see, fairly flat there. Some interesting things happening on the Booker site. The buildings, as you know, have issues, but we looked at them inside and out and looked at ways that can try to understand what we can do with those, but as we go through this process, you'll see how that evolved there. We looked at the ag building. So these concept plans here, I'm going to go through. There's two concept plans for the complex site, and then the Booker site has one. In the interest of time, this is kind of the reason these are in here is because these are the actual drawings that led to the more developed master plans. So what you'll notice, and there's a pointer here, but in the center you'll see a realigned vehicular access onto Cleveland Road. That's a pretty strong element that was part of this process here. This plan, the diagram, it tries to keep as much of the existing ball fields intact as possible, but it does include a new facility, new recreation center in A, where you see it there. A lot of circulation, a lot of connectivity. So that's option one, which will be further developed in the master plan that you'll see in a second. Again, these are concept diagrams. This one is the second option, where there's a more centrally located recreation center with A in the center there. The circulation, new circulation connecting across Cleveland to Cleveland Fire Road is really one of the highlights of this option. And then the completely reconfigured ball fields, whereas previously, as I mentioned, it had the existing ball fields in place. So I'm going to go to the Booker site real quick, diagrammatically. Thing that takes the most visually dominance is in the center there. You see the multi-use complex, the A, and then you see some parking that's sort of scattered about that's necessary for that use. And then you notice a lot of open space. And we heard it, and it's something that we wanted to provide and keep. So where you see the letter M and then all the trails that are sort of around it. So on this site, we wanted to respond to the needs of what the community asked for, but also recognize the value of open space. And so that was one of the strong components of this. So I'm going to go straight into the master plans that are a little bit more defined than what you have seen to that point. And at any point you want along the way, you can stop me, please. So again, the more defined complex option 1, you see the realigned entry to Cleveland Road. You see the new recreation center that's actually in the location of the existing buildings at that point. The fields are pretty much in the same location, just new infrastructure, new parking, and really increased pedestrian experience for this. Really trying to create more of a campus setting. For this site, since it's already, has recreation on it, what can we do to make it feel more connected, more of a campus, without completely reconfiguring it? Here's an image of what it could look like with the realigned entry there, a new building in the location of the existing buildings, but then the fields are in pretty much the same location as you have right now with associated parking. I will say that the Johnston County, the college facility there, it's been included in the master plan as an element that we know is there, but that is something that has bigger picture implications for how that site would be used. You'll see it incorporated into all these, but I think that there would need to be a larger conversation about that site that I think Adrian can help speak to, and you all can help speak to. But the goal was to look at what would be possible from a larger scale perspective, and it is incorporated. All of these plans that you're seeing here are suggestions about what the possibilities are, and go farther into the future than what all of us will live to see. So decisions need to be made on that, and we understood that. So looking at the architecture here, these are diagrams about what could possibly fit in the spaces that we have identified, trying to be responsive to the community input that we heard. So you'll see active recreation, flexible space, and some suggestions about what that could look like. On the second level, so that was the first level, this is the second level with the track, active recreation, and multi-use space for art and that sort of thing. And then what it would look like as a sort of a blown up thing here. And then you'll see the distribution of square footage, and this applies to all the different versions that you'll see here. So you'll see heavy use of the gym, and then on the left are the flexible spaces that could be defined over time when you get further into design. More images about what it could look like. That front entry that I mentioned is really something that has potential to be something that is a strong element that helps define that entry. Right now, it doesn't have a defined entrance. That's what this is suggesting, and really a sense of arrival, a sense of place. The motor court, some suggestions for the architecture and what that could look like. Moving along, the Grove, we're calling it, the central gathering space here. Those are the existing food facility concession. Thank you. But creating a new hub there for people, and a lot of shade and seating areas for people to enjoy. Because currently, it's, as you know, pretty wide open. And last time when we all met out there, I think we were pretty hot. So this is the second option for the complex site. Again, the main entrance coming off Cleveland Road as the sort of defining feature, and then in the very center you see the new recreation building that is the central sort of hub of this option. The new reconfigured ballparks in the center as well, and I can zoom in on a couple of these locations. This is an artist rendering of what it could look like. This is looking back toward, over the complex, back towards Cleveland Road, way off in the distance there. And then you see the central building that can overlook the play. And then in the foreground, you see a completely renovated hub there that has the all the functions you would need for baseball, including a new concession stand, playground, pavilion space, that sort of thing. So moving along, new recreation center here. Some suggestions about what that could be. Really seeing it as a hub for this new option here. The baseball, softball complex core. It's more organized than currently out there, defined around a central sort of spoke, if you will. With the, it's hard to see it at this scale, but the images on the right show what the possibilities are for the dugouts and the shade complex, the shade structures, and then also just demonstrating on the upper right that it's really an area of gathering for people to be able to hang out and enjoy themselves, even if you're not playing baseball. Suggestions for what the playground and the spray park could be in that location. And then looking at the architecture for this option. It has a similar scope and a similar program than the first option, but it's a bigger building. And you can have a bigger building in this option because you're not as constrained by the existing surrounding parameters that are part of the option one. So this one has more flexibility. The second floor, you can see what would happen there. So the track going around the top. And then the distribution of uses. Again, the total square feet is 61,000. It's a bigger building that provides more flexibility if you chose to go that route. Okay, so now we're going to go to, so that's the complex. We're going to go to the Booker site. And, right now, it's a completely blank slate, which is totally different than the complex site. But it's also very exciting and interesting opportunity for the county to provide an amenity above and beyond. So the goal was to try to mix the uses between the two sites. So this one is more of a multi-use. You might say soccer, even though we're not saying it's just for that. You could divide it up and play it many different things. So you'll see, and I'll go around. I have a few slides that show, the characters of these spaces as well. The thing that you might not, or the thing that becomes pretty obvious in this image here, as you're looking from Matthews and Polenta there, looking back, is you're noticing that obviously the central play area, the open space for the multi-purpose fields, but you're also noticing a lot of vegetation, a lot of trees that currently don't exist at all except for that back edge up there. And the thought here is that right now, it's hard to imagine there being a park setting with, lush vegetation and trees and that sort of thing. But what we're trying to do is set the stage really for a plan that would take many decades really to come to fruition, and that over time what people would envision is, wow, they really designed a park around all these trees and they really made it integrated into this space. That's the longer term goal is to really make it feel that way. So looking at just a few items on of the features of the plan itself, you have the entry area, again a sense of arrival, sense of place. The dog run, mentioned again here tonight. In this case, it's really just open space. It is open space for the dogs to run, but it is also a very social place as well. So you're seeing it there, and it wouldn't really be. It's enclosed, but it also feels very, very open. So I'm going to move you around. If you notice the parking lot on the upper left of this image, we're going to go to the left of that. So you're going to pick up a piece of that. Oh, went the wrong way. There's a piece of that parking lot, and now you're looking at the destination playground / water spray play area. And it's really intended to be that destination playground and spray that would be an attraction for people who would come from far and wide to come to a place like this that has a lot of attraction and a lot of amenity for folks. And then you'll notice that it has a restroom facility on the left-hand side there. If you just pick up the next image, is going to pick up from that point to the left. You have the community event space, And you see the vestiges of the playground off on the bottom right there. So this is envisioned to be a flexible use space that could hold up from 500 people comfortably up to 5,000 people comfortably. It takes advantage of the existing slope that's there. It's set back against the wood, so it looks pretty much like the picture on the bottom right there. Very much like that. So it's an open air structure, something that could be programmed over time, but it would also just feel fine if, you know, if it's not in use. It's just part of the circulation. The multi-purpose complex that we're looking at here, again, programmed for a lot of different uses, including soccer, football, rugby, lacrosse, whatever it is. But the central spine that you see coming through the center there is a feature that sort of made its way through the design process. And the bottom right picture shows how some containers could be opened up and used for local businesses who would want to be vendors, or you could get food, you could get given services, that sort of thing. So that is a programmable space. And you see the basketball on the left and pickleball as well. And then parking, we know we need to have it. It's just how can it be integrated more sensitively into the landscape. Open space character is something that's a pretty important aspect of this plan. It's kind of hard to envision right now. You see, you know, the big agricultural field that's there now. But really, this is meant to evoke is the feeling that someone would get 20, 30 years from now, maybe even not that long. The trees would really help frame up the spaces. That it's hard to, again, envision that this is what it could look like, but it's something that is very possible. And then the roadway, we know we need to get to the rear of the site. The roadway character that you see there is for multi-use. It's bicycles, cars, you need to get them back there, but it also has just this feeling of open space as well. And so one more picture of the complex, this is the open space looking back across toward the complex. You see in the foreground the playground, and then off to the right a little bit the performance public space there. You see the character as well, and then the open space on the right. Did include, as a desired from the community, on the parcel that's the triangular piece, the original sort of Booker track there, more active play with the disc golf and the destination skate park as well. On the Booker site alone, just this port is nearly 5 miles of trails. We have natural paths, we have 2 miles of multi-purpose, and then just the circulation inside. Interior. So the goal is to provide ample space for people to be able to get around inside the site. Looking at some restored ecological zones as an educational space is also a way to sort of the existing wooded edge be a place that starts to come away from that, gives more of a stream buffer, help save that, preserve the stream buffer. So that's what's being identified there. So we're going to talk really briefly about implementation and phasing. For the complex option 1, there's going to be 3 that you're going to see here, the option 1 for the complex, option 2, and then the Booker site, which have been broken into the 3 different phases here. So you'll see for this option here, which keeps the fields intact and but it has a new building, you'll see a total of 35.5 there. Goes up a little bit more when you have the centrally located rec center there. And then the Booker site here, you're seeing the yellow area would be considered the first phase, and then the trails, the blue area. Phase 3 is the orange on the right, and then phase 4 is the bottom. But these would be something that would have to be developed over time. It would be something that everyone would agree on which the phases would happen. But that is essentially the bulk of the presentation. And I can go back into any of them that you'd like to. I know there's a lot to digest in a short period of time, but happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Comments?
I got a comment. It was a grand plan, but it's a Cadillac plan. I thought we were going after a Chevrolet plan. Maybe I just misunderstood. You remember when we had that gathering out at Cleveland High School when they talked about possibly putting into place a recreation tax for that district and putting it to a vote? And do you remember the rough plan that some of the leadership in the community out there had for us at the site of, Matthews and Belinda? And it's a pretty basic plan, open space and some athletic fields, and maybe in the future a clubhouse with a swimming pool. I never envisioned a SRAC, if you will, a SRAC plus.
It's repetition, most a lot of our school systems.
Do what?
A lot of repetition like what we do in our school system.
Yeah. I just have a hard time justifying public money. If I were a developer and wanted to attract people to my site to buy my lots, I would think that something like that would be, important. But as far as the entry, for example, if we build a park for the citizens to use, I don't know that we need to be concerned about things like that, amenities that would invite them there. Does that make sense? Maybe. Yeah, please.
One of the items with the entry is more of a realignment than really, a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Step to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. That realignment is more of a safety item than it is. If any of y'all have gone to GCAA site, which is normally what it's called.
Right.
You've got two roads there. You've got an entryway right across from it. There are some improvements coming through DOT, and we just want to capitalize on those improvements. And the other thing is, we're not talking about doing this tomorrow. We're not asking you to adopt the funding associated with this. We're asking you to adopt these ideas and to look at it long range. This is not a tomorrow plan. This is a 20, 30, 40-year plan. And in having that plan in place, the next thing you're going to hear about is Parks Recreation Trust Fund grants.
Mm-hmm.
When you have this plan in place, it sets you up for those Parks Recreation Trust Fund grants. It sets you up for those Land and Water Trust Fund grants. It sets you up to be able to leverage some of the money we have in the county, some of the money that we may have through donations, some of the money that we can get from the state and the federal government. And on all of this, we've put numbers with it. Now, I'm not confident in numbers today that we look at 20 years down the road. We all know that they increase. They may go down. They rarely do, but they may go down. But these numbers just give us a target. So please don't be scared by those numbers. I understand what you're saying about SRAC.
Yeah.
And this building is not slated to have a pool. Pools are great. They're very expensive. This building is more of a replacement for the building that's there, which is going to have to happen eventually anyway. We've got one wall on that building that's going to fall off. It's already cracked on both ends. And we know that's not a tomorrow thing.
What is that, the old gym?
Yeah, it was the old gym for the school. We also have water coming in there every time it rains and flooding the floor. So we've got issues. And while we were doing this plan, we wanted to go ahead and address those issues. So if something happened and money did fall in our lap on the recreation side, we'd be ready for it.
Yeah.
And that's what this is for.
Yeah, I agree with Jaden that, if we're going to design a master plan for the future, a blueprint for what we want to do, and, we're talking about 30 years out, I think we should look at what possibly can be. And it's not saying that we're going to do it, everything like that, but we have something to look at. And I sometimes disagree with my fellow friend down there, Commissioner Godwin. If we're going to spend the money, I want something that will be used in the benefit of the citizens and that they can get use out of it.
And please don't think of it. We tried to design it in a way that it wouldn't be thought of as a Cleveland park built by county money. We want it to be a regional park. It just happened to be in Cleveland.
And we want another one down here just like it.
Exactly.
Okay?
Are there any questions y'all have about
You can
the,
say anything.
Yeah.
any questions y'all have?
I don't
for
know
me?
that Tony disagrees with me because I want to see a functional park that's pleasing and can be used by the citizens and enjoyed. But I'm often reminded of visiting a small town in the eastern part of the state, real poor town. And every building in there was very poor, except one, and it was a grandiose. I mean, these are all 3 buildings. This one was a 10. It was the public building, the town hall. I mentioned to my son, wonder why that one is so grandiose. He said, you know, nobody paid for it out of their own pocket. Public money. Just think about it.
Well, I think we're going to have, I hope we have further conversations over the next 2 years about parks and regulations and other issues, because I mentioned it at the retreat. You know, 2007, last time we had a recreation bond, it passed at 72%. We need funds to operate recreation with. And this open space money is going to run out sooner or later.
I agree with you, Tony.
Everybody's money is nobody's money.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, I mean, I think it's a good start. I do. I love every exact component of it? No, probably not, but I think it's a great master plan to move us in the future. And I think you said something that's very important, is it also puts us in line to be available for grant opportunities and things of that nature. If you have no plan, then you aren't in line for grant opportunities. Right. So at least when we have a plan, we have something, we have a vision of where we would like to be, whether it takes us 5 years to get there, it takes us 30 years to get there. But at least we have a vision, we have a road map to get us where we want to go. So I think it's a great start, and I appreciate your work on it. And I agree with Mr. Braswell that I think more conversation needs to be had about a recreation bond.
The only part I don't like is it's going to be 30, 40 years on some of it.
Well, and I will say pragmatism is not a bad thing when you're looking at these, but it does cost more to do recreation now than it has in the past.
I'll send you some pictures.
Again, I'll say what I've told y'all many times. It's not something farmers do in the wintertime anymore. It's right. A very technical process, and you know, the standard adopted by the NRPA, which is the National Recreation Park Association, is to have a park within a 10-minute walk of every residence. And we know that's never going to happen in Johnston County. Well, I'm not saying it's never going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. But we got to start somewhere.
Yep.
Got to start somewhere.
I agree.
So I'm gonna turn it back over to, and I want to thank Terry and Maiwa for coming out tonight with Stewart and CPL. They did a great job on this plan. I've seen a lot of plans, and this one, as far as including everything, takes the cake, including everything that was mentioned. I will say that this plan is a good plan. It's got a lot of stuff on it, and it'll take a long time to do it all. But there's a lot of safety features in here too that can't be overlooked. Like I said, we've got every piece of it spelled out. So if somebody comes to us and says, I want to do this for Johnston County, we can pull that piece out and tell them exactly how much it's going to cost. So that's another good part of it.
Right.
And other than that, I'm going to let Austin talk to you for a few more minutes about another opportunity that is related to this. I hope that y'all look at. I will say that we would like to have a public hearing on the 15th for this plan to be adopted. And that's the concept, because there's not any engineering in this plan right now. We haven't done that part of it.
Purely conceptual.
It's conceptual plan, right? Conceptual master plan. So I'll just put that in front of you, and then I'll turn it over to Austin.
So you're going to talk about the grant?
I'm going to talk about the park
So
grant.
do you want us, from this board, to go ahead and consider holding the public hearing on the 15th? Is that something we need to vote on, or consensus, or?
When, the 15th?
May the 15th.
Yeah.
Have a public hearing.
Yes.
Yeah, I move that we do that if we need a motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries, so we'll have a public hearing on May the 15th at our, I guess, the same 6 o'clock evening meeting, so, okay. All right, Austin, proceed on.
Okay. So as Adrian mentioned, the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund, that's coming up. That's the part of grant. Basically, it's state funds. It's $500,000. It's a 1-to-1 match. So what we're thinking is doing part of the phase 1 for that. The total for phase 1 is $7.9 million. What we're going to go for, and this will get us extra points. So one of the big criteria for part of is you want to have 3 or more recreational components built with that funding. So what we're going to go for in total would be 1.9. 500,000 would go towards that. We would hope to get Land and Water Conservation Fund for that as well, which would be another 500,000. You can actually take the part of and match that with LWCF, so it wouldn't actually even directly come out of the county budget. You'd just be paying more or less for one in that 1-to-1 match. So the development what we would be going for would be your site prep work, clearing, grading, grubbing, your utilities, water, sewer, electrical, and the recreational components would be 2 courts. It would be the basketball court and the pickleball court, and then also one of the ponds you saw in there, we're actually thinking about doing that as a fishing pond. It's a public fishing pond. So that'll give us our 3 components. That's a lot of points in the grand scheme. So we've got the application pretty much done. The only thing I'll mention with that is that we do have a public meeting that's exclusively for the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund. It's part of the grant process. That'll be Wednesday the 19th from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Cleveland Fire Station number 1. Chris over there was generous enough to give us a space, and we're hoping to also speak a little bit about the master plan without going into too much detail since we haven't adopted it yet. So with that, I would just like to get approval to apply for the part of grant, which is due May 1st.
Okay. Any other questions? Or do I hear a motion?
1-to-1 match.
It's 1-to-1.
And do we have to match it? We have to, like 500,000, we got to match with 500,000.
Mm-hmm. It's the reimbursement. So it's a reimbursement grant. So you spend the money up front, you get reimbursed back.
But we can get a dollar's worth of 50 cents. Yeah, if we can get it.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I so move that we go ahead and give authorization for submittal of grant.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve submittal of the grant application. Any other questions, comments?
What's the timing on it, Austin?
How long? I think they usually give awards out in September.
Okay.
It's the general date. Everything's moving a little slow right now. Everyone's, we're growing so big in North Carolina that everyone's submitting a lot of applications, but I think last year that's how it generally was.
Is there a time frame for spending the money?
3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yeah, so we have plenty of time to spend it.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank y'all.
Thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right, next up, we have an item to consider resolution in support of North Carolina Senate Bill 379, which is redistricting residency districts for commissioners. And I'm going to try to give this a little history, and if you could put up the map for me there, or Susie, whoever has that. So just a little history as the map's coming up. I think it was in 1990, and I'll get, Mr. Hester can correct me on this, but in 1990, the board that sat at that time adopted a resolution to change the voting method for the election of commissioners. And I think in 92 was the first election with the districts you see on the screen there with the 7 districts. However, we are not considered a true electoral district, where that's, you live in the district and only the people in that district vote on you. We have residency districts where we each live, and we are voted on at large by the entire county. And so one thing I want to draw your attention to, the map there is, you look at the numbers, the larger numbers are, of course, the district. The other numbers, and I'm just going to look at District 1, it's the easiest one to see and read, and the largest number is, there's an estimated population of about 53,000 people in that district. And then I'll contrast that with District 2, which currently there's an estimated 18,000 people in that district. And so if you can look at there's 3 districts, 4 districts that are, hang on, let me look. Yeah, 4 districts that are over 40,000, and the other 2 are under 3 are under 23,000. The other numbers that you see on there that's separated by the slash, the first number is the number of registered voters in 1990 for that district. And technically, I guess that would be 1992 for that district. And you see at that time, District 2 was the largest district as far as registered voters go. And then on the other side of that slash,
That's amazing, isn't it?
is the current number of registered voters in the district as of this year. So you will see District 2 went from the largest to the smallest over those course of 30-something years.
Yeah.
So the resolution, as it's been entered into the legislation by Senator Sawrey, was for us to be able to redraw those residency boundaries only. It's not any changes to the voting method, but simply to try to even out the number that each of people that each commissioner represents. And so that's simply what this resolution is for us to redraw those lines to balance out the population in each one of the residency districts. And Mr. Etcher, is there anything else you want to add to that? And it's an item I will say that I don't know how it was discussed before I came on the board, but in 2018 there was some discussion, and we've had comments from the public on this various times throughout those 5 years. We've commented on, we discussed it at the retreat. So it's been something we've talked about, but we now have the opportunity to be able to address those.
But, fellow commissioners, I also want to draw, you drew attention to District 2. I want to draw attention to District 1. In 1990 was not only the smallest, but by far had the least number of voters. Only 3,467. Everybody else was 5,000, 6,000, basically. And that moved in the past 23 years from being the smallest by far to being the largest by far, 33,000 voters, and which is almost larger than put three districts put together. So I just think that shows the change that's happening in that part of the county.
Mr. Chairman, I would point out the only real tangible difference this makes to anyone in the county as far as the process is concerned is that it expands on these that will change and get larger. It will expand the area of candidates from that particular district.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Because you got to live in the district.
That's right. Yeah, this is the districts where the commissioner or candidate for commissioner will have to live. Right. The entire county will still continue to vote on the commissioners.
If I understand the reason we're doing this, and maybe I got it all wrong, it doesn't matter to me, but I understood the reason we were supporting this was so that the district boundaries would be redrawn so that each commissioner would relatively represent the same number of people. Like District 1 would get smaller, substantially smaller.
Correct.
And say District 2 would get substantially larger. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And I will say that the way the legislation exists currently, we do not have the ability to make that change on our own, and that's why we had to go to the state legislature to get that change entered there. And then it's an opportunity for us to look at, and we're looking at talking about 2024 or after. We still have to go through the mechanics of redrawing the districts, getting public input on those, and then making a decision on what we want. But we do not have the ability to do that ourselves, and thus we've had this introduced as a bill.
So you think that would, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, you think that would apply to 2024 or not?
I would hope that it would, but it depends on how long it takes to draw. I think we have time to get it done, but realistically, if we were looking at December to file, we've got a relatively short fuse, but I think that there are people who draw these maps that can provide us some information fairly quickly in a manner that lets us get this in front of us and the public and make a decision in time for that election.
So you get out of 1 2-year election cycle, and then the next year you're back into another election cycle. You know, it's not long, because I'm sure filing will be in December. I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Mr. Chairman, the county attorney had rendered an opinion on this, I should say, that if we were going to have this implemented by the 2024 general election, and our resolution would need to be adopted no later than October 7th of 23. So this would have to be done by October 7th of 23.
So 4 months.
Essentially 4 months to get it done, if it was going to be effective for the 2024 election cycle.
I don't know it's all that crucial. I mean, there again, it doesn't change the way people vote.
No, but it more equalizes, as Commissioner Smith says, the number of citizens per district, and therefore, there's 52,000 people that have the opportunity to run for county commissioner in District 1, whereas in District 2, there's only 18,744 people have the opportunity to run in District 2. So it's a more fair process, I think, in equalizing the population. And, you know, we all represent the whole county, and we're all voted on by the entire county, but those resident requirement districts would be more equalized.
Yeah, and I would think, for me personally, where I sit is I would like to see the 2024 election be a part of it, but I'm not going to force it. If we get into something that's for some reason more complicated than we think, and I'd rather us get it right again rather than force it. So we've got to start the process, and if it leads to an October 7th adoption, that would be great. If we find that it doesn't, then we'll look at 2026.
We need to adopt this tonight.
I think we need to adopt the resolution tonight so we can move forward.
I move we adopt the resolution.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
When you looking at redesigning, are you looking that some people sitting in the current district may not be sitting in that district in 2024?
As I understand it, that is a consideration.
I thought, yeah.
So it is a consideration of sitting commissioners or folks who will not be sitting in that election. So I think that is a consideration.
Okay.
And I think Commissioner Stevens is on with us. Commissioner Stevens, do you have any comments?
No, sir, thank you.
I know she's having a rough time with the connection, so we'll give her. Is she still on, Ben?
Yeah, she's still on. I heard her speak through my head.
I'm trying.
Okay.
Sorry. There's a delay. No, I don't have any issues, Chairman.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion to approve the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
It does say on here that it does not affect the unexpired term of office of a commissioner currently serving. That's Jennifer's.
Yeah, if you're up in 26, it doesn't affect us until our next election.
Right.
So 2024 is, we'll see what happens for 2024 as we move along. So
2024, folks.
2024, folks.
Which I assume, if we do this, we would hire some consultants to come in and draw these lines.
That is the way I understand the process to work. It's not going to be the seven of us sitting and drawing.
Do like they do in Raleigh, those lines will line up with commissioners sitting here. We'll pretty much have a district that they can run in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what normally happens. I'm not saying it will happen. But that's what normally
Yeah, I think that, I mean, again, we don't have our attorney here, and she would better explain it than me, but as I understand it, that is a consideration for redrawing the districts is the residency of the current commissioner in that district.
Yeah, I don't think we ought to draw them out of it. But I really didn't think about trying to look at the voting potential. I just look at numbers, just the number of people.
Yeah, but again, because it is the whole county voting, and although we live in a district, we represent the entire county.
Yeah,
I
that
think
takes
that's
the
important
emphasis off of that.
Right. All right, any other comments before we move on to the comprehensive land use plan? All right, Mr. Newton, do you have anything to introduce before we get off and running on this?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Just did want to remind you that, so their March 20th meeting, our consulting team and one of our lead consultants, Mr. Ben Hitchings, is with us this evening. Ms. Nealon could not be here, unfortunately, due to a scheduling conflict. So just to remind you, just to kind of briefly recap from the presentation back on March 20th, we had presented a number of options specifically with regard to the future land use. Obviously, the initial map that was provided for you in the draft plan, initial draft plan, and we had an option 2, 3, and 4. Option 2, just as a quick recap, really we had identified several areas for study where there could be some opportunities where you could justify the changing or modifying the place types for those areas throughout the county, and there were specifically 2 areas identified, one in the north, kind of northeast area of the county, and one more centrally located, closer to Pine Level. So that was the one of those options. The option number 3 was the second alternative option was we looked at the county in a little more holistic perspective. We once again ran an analysis of suitability, land suitability, and other criteria, and we determined that there were areas that it was justified to once again make a place type change, and these were a little more far-reaching in terms of those changes. So it did shift some of the agricultural designation to rural residential, and it actually expanded in some areas, small areas, the low-density residential district, and this is more of that, if you want to say, McGee's area and on up toward the western border of the county with Wade County. And then there was the 4th option. The 4th option, we actually looked at removing the agricultural place type and making all of that the rural residential place type. Now, with all of these options, there are impacts to the text, which is somewhat has some impact on future policy with regard to land use decisions, ordinances, and other applicable policies impacting land use or that land use may impact. So in doing that, we provided you with a red line or a mock-up of the text with some minor adjustments and amendments to represent these changes in the future land use maps. or these future land use map options. Additionally, if you'll recall, we also provided you with a priority investment map and some priority investment tiers, tiers 1 through 3, and this was something for your consideration. So what we'd ask is for you to provide feedback and provide directive on how we move forward to get this plan to adoption with regard to the options that have been provided to you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to speak on which option we pick. And I would like to advocate for option 4. I think option 4 will be fair to all of our citizens. You know, agriculture is an industry, as we've said. We don't name any other land based on an industry. And to name some land after an industry is I don't think is fair. I would say that almost every farmer in Johnston County that's farming or using their land for agricultural use is not doing it because of a zoning situation. They're doing it because they love farming, they're passionate about farming, and their family is involved with them in their agricultural industry pursuits. But we know that the age of most of the farmers, or a good part of the farmers in Johnston County, is getting up there closer to 60 years old. And we know that many farmers are beginning to reach the situation where they no longer have the passion to farm and they don't have a family member who's interested in continuing the farm. And I think that to have their land called rural living, I believe, is the right classification, because that's what it is. They're living in rural Johnston County, and just as some people cash their 401 plan in, some people sell their stocks, farmers sell their land. And I think they shouldn't have to start in a hole of have a presumption that that land is going to, quote, remain agriculture. And so therefore, I think option 4 is the fairest option for our citizens and accurately reflects the future of our county.
All right. Any other comments or thoughts on?
I have a question.
On that?
I've got a revised copy of the latest revised, but have you got those options written down in a succinct manner?
I do not. So in the presentation that was provided to you, each one of them are, there's a map, obviously, for each option, and I think you'll see some bullet points in there which kind of identify those, and that is in the original presentation. If you would.
Ted, it was on a March 27th thing they sent out, and that's the option 4 right there.
Okay.
March 26th.
That's whoops. Back up.
In other words, if we could do something different other than 4, and we leave an agriculture designation on it, for someone for the farmer to actually cash in on his life's work, you're going to have to rezone it to get to something else with it, and then it's going to be right back in front of us again.
That's right.
So now, just keep in mind that the place types doesn't necessarily equate to a specific zoning.
It doesn't.
It equates to zoning designation or a zoning category, but it's not a zoning. So within this place type of rural living or agriculture or low density residential, you can have a diverse zoning district categories throughout within that place type.
Then what, if there's not some presumption or something about agriculture, why is there any opposition whatsoever to calling it rural living?
I'm not opposing. I'm just trying
Then
to keep distinct the difference between place types and zoning. Zoning is extremely specific.
Sure, I understand
Just want
that.
to make sure we're clear on that. And excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit of allergy going on.
Me too.
So let me look. I see option 4, and frankly, the biggest concern I have for option, when I'm looking at what I see envision land use is option 4. Yeah, there we go. Includes that whole southern end of the county, which I think that will be longer to develop. And I just want to make sure, Braxton, this is a question for you. On option 3, it does not include that southern end of the county, but it does includes the 210 and some areas up in the northern corner, and then some around Pine Level, Princeton, Micro, and I guess that's Kinley. No, Micro, sorry, in there. So are we just talking about in those areas within the boxes would have the rural living category expanded in
Yeah,
both
so-
3 and 4?
So that's where it would be the most impactful, yes, sir.
But it would also be impactful up there,
It would, yes, sir.
up in the north,
in the northern
east.
corner.
Yeah, that's right.
It would, yes, sir. So I'll go back to the original draft. And here's what you see is just for the northern portion, you can see where we have these, if you want to say, donut holes of agricultural area in these little peninsulas. They start to change through these options. Option 2, you can see the change. And once again, option 3, where your low-density residential has actually increased, has expanded in that northern area, in addition to it's the rural living area as well, rural living place type. The same has happened in the, if we want to say, Pleasant Grove area, 210. So this was the original. No change in option 2, but in option 3, you can see that the rural living area has expanded essentially to encompass everything to Black Creek to the south, and to the west, it actually, rural living has expanded beyond, or remains, the rural living was in the original draft to the east of Black Creek.
Butch, let me ask you a question, because this is an important issue. Do you think whether in the meta area, whether it's called agriculture or whether it's called rural living, will change anybody's use of any land down there?
I don't know the answer. My suspicion is that it may open it up to, if it's still zoned agriculture, then that use may be extended. I don't think it's going to be eliminated. I think that use may be extended. I think in the long term, it's going to change to the rural living at some point. But I just see, my thoughts right now are, I can see the other areas other than that one, the rural living being more applicable in the next 20, 30 years than I do in that southern piece. But I don't disagree in the long after we're gone, it's going to be,
Yeah, I just don't
be that.
see why we would, I mean, it's like taking someone's land and putting a stigma on it, whereas the use of the land is going to be the same, whether it's rural use, rural living, or agriculture. And I just think we need to be very careful about what we do with people's land. So let me get it where I think it needs to be. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve option 4.
motion. Do I hear a second? All right, hearing no second, let's continue our discussion in that. Ben, we've heard from a couple of us. We've got 5 more here that we'd like to hear from.
I have a strong tendency to agree with Commissioner Smith, but I'm trying to make sure I run all the cogs through the right.
Well, so let me see if I can say this. Options 1 and 2 are off the table. Is anybody looking at options 1 and 2, or are we at 3 and 4? And
3 and 4 is pretty much going to be it.
Can you send it to me? I'd like to be able to have it right in front of me. I can't pull it up on here.
I will. Hang on.
I think what Fred says makes a lot of sense.
It does.
I just want, like Diggy said, get it right in my mind.
So why don't nobody second it if you thought it make a lot of sense?
Well, I think they want to.
I'm at loss.
Well, I think Commissioner Smith brings up some good points. When I first sat down in the chair this evening, I had a different opinion, but after listening to him, I think he does make some good points, but I'm not sure that I'm ready to jump on the bandwagon just yet. There's something, and it may just be the part that I struggle with about taking the agricultural part out of it. I don't know if that.
I continue to say, because it's called agriculture.
I understand.
Not one person will farm it any different than if it's called rural living.
I don't disagree with you.
So let me see if I sent it to you in the text. It wouldn't let me email it, so you can open it up. I think there. Anybody else? But you don't have yours. You got it.
No, it's been trying. I can't sign into my email.
Okay, hold on.
That's Dana's phone. She forgets my password.
All right.
So if the group decides to move forward with option 4, one consideration is looking at your descriptions or the descriptions of the place types from agriculture and rural living. Your rural living place type is described as an area that's characterized by low density residential development. Small subdivisions are part of the landscape but include larger lots and more open space than other residential areas. Clustered developments, are also known as conservation subdivisions, are encouraged, allowing the flexibility in design in exchange for more reserved open space. It would, going forward, if we do go forward with option 4, if that's the desire of this board, and we're glad to do that and make that happen and make those changes, I would think we would need to at least look at retooling that description of rural living to incorporate agriculture.
I think I said this last time. Until you know what map you're going to go with, all the other, that will dictate the other things. And I'm happy to get into other things like LU4 and LU5. But I think the best way to do it would be to approve the map and then give you and your staff a chance to make the adjustments like that. And then
we would be redefining the place types, redefining them.
I think you would. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least address it, look at it, analyze it, and determine whether or not we need to add or change the language such that it identifies that you're still trying to, I'm not going to say promote, but preserve agriculture where it may be, where people desire for it to be preserved. Still allow for that. Right now, that would essentially remove any mention of agriculture for that rural living description.
But is it going to preclude anyone from
No, it would
farming
not. No, that's done through, once again, that goes back to your land usage, your identified land uses within our development ordinances. we'll take care of that, but I still think it's in best management practice in this case to make sure that we've identified that.
And the buffers that we talked about would still apply to rural use.
We would have to address that in our ordinance, yes, sir.
Yeah,
We
but
can
you,
make that.
I mean, it would be, if you want to farm, you would be just as much protected under rural living as you would be under agriculture. The only issue is going to come is that day when you can no longer farm and your children have gone, are you going to be able to get the fair value for your land?
Because of the title that's on it.
That's right.
I'm not sure that I might buy on to that. That part of the title is going on, of the land is going to define whether you get more on it, more for it or not.
But if not, why are people continuing, why are people fighting to keep this agricultural zoning? If it doesn't mean anything, if it doesn't have some meaning, if it doesn't have something, why are people continuing to want to grab it and keep it so other people have to have their land with the black mark of agriculture so that when they want to cash it in, they got a burden they got to go over. And we don't do that to any other industry. We don't do that to the restaurant industry. We don't say, okay, everybody's in the restaurant industry, we're going to zone it for restaurants or whatever. We don't zone other industries and call it that.
So let me understand. We're not talking zoning.
Yeah, I'm not
right now. We're talking about land use types.
Zoning's going to go with it, though.
Well, it will place types. So zoning will go with it, but we haven't established zoning. That's part of our ordinance. So
we don't know what's going to be in that zoning classification.
We could maintain the agriculture with the zoning underneath it to match, because and this is my concern, and I understand what Commissioner Smith is saying by all means, but if we will have basically, and what we have now is an AR designation with subdivisions able to go in to agriculture, and so what is agriculture areas as it is currently, we will have that same situation in option 4 where subdivisions can go in, and we'll have same thing we have McGee's and the rest of the county right now, whereas AR and it's approved.
Essentially what you'll have is density, intensity, and scale, right? So you have over this rural living or any place type, you'll have a varied or diverse group of zoning districts. Each zoning district will allow a certain intensity and will permit a certain intensity and scale. And there may there'll be various options or mechanisms to achieve some of that intensity and scale. Cluster developments being one of those.
Or PUD or something.
So again, this is land, what'd you say, land use?
Place types.
Place types. So so we could approve a place type, and then the zoning would be what would have the teeth in it to make sure whatever the process is.
What they talk about, if you go to LU5, they talk about conservation designs and farmhouse clusters, which you can use so that in the rural living, you still can do clusters or conservation. I believe it's the conservation where you can take a tract of land that's 350 acres at 1 acre per lot. You get 350 lots. Well, if you do a conservation, as I understand it, a conservation plan, let's say on half the land, you can put 350 lots, and then the other half you would leave as open space. You can do that in, as I understand it, in rural living. I don't think, as I've read this, and I'm clearly not so much of an expert, there's not much difference in what you can do with land in agriculture and rural living. And I think rural living works good. And if you go to page that one other, let me see if I get this right.
Yeah, I was going to go back to what you just said while you're looking is if it doesn't matter where you call it agriculture or rural place type, then I would say let's call it agriculture because we heard a lot about preserving agriculture. And let's put the zoning underneath that to
People who
allow.
live out there would probably like to see that.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't say it doesn't matter. I think it matters because your descriptions, you have to look, you can't look solely at the map. The map's not independent, nor is the text. They're mutually dependent. So we need to make sure that we've captured what the vision for a rural living area actually looks like.
And how we identify a place type.
That's correct.
Same
with agriculture.
When people say, we want agricultural zoning, we want agricultural zoning, what they're saying is, I want to take somebody else's property. I want to take somebody else's property and put a claim on it because I like it.
And I think our role is to consider that, but at the same time, what is that fine line between allowing a farmer to sell his land when that point in time comes?
I think the farmers are going to farm just as much under rural living as they will agriculture. The issue becomes, at the end of the day, what burden do they have to maximize their life's work? And you have to be in that position to feel that way. And
there was a time in this county when you graduated from high school, your options were a spinning mill, a furniture factory, private, or agriculture. Mm-hmm. That time is come and gone. Farmers is much more profitable now than it was back in those days, but it's a lot more mechanized. But I think that the farmers now, they're going to reach a sunset in their life where they're not going to farm anymore. If they don't have some family member, all they've got, I don't think we really would devalue their land, but the very fact that what steps, how we structure this thing so that we don't make it. So if they do decide they want to get it out of this agriculture stigmatism, that there's a process that's easy, that's not going to be something they got to go through all the zoning changes, what is how we do the place types is going to be very important.
So, never mind.
I don't really think it makes any difference what you call it.
I don't think it makes any difference what you call it.
then let's call it rural living, if it doesn't make any difference.
I don't support
Yeah.
Yeah, we look at this area, we have rezoned AR for the last years and built subdivisions and houses. So those farmers came out okay.
Yep.
So I guess they did, so I don't see a problem personally. The only thing I don't like the expansion of down that whole meta area down there.
under option 4.
Yeah.
But I don't represent that, you do.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody
We
in Meta.
represent the whole county.
We represent the whole county, but I'm not gonna be an advocate for it, you know,
Yeah.
if you, but, and I also don't like the expansion down 210.
Yeah.
I don't like that at all, but again, I think we're, moving that area. It's in option 3, so it don't make any difference. I don't like it either way. That area down 210, that's just me,
I agree.
But whatever y'all say,
So we have had a motion for option 4.
I would favor option 3.
All right, do I hear a motion for option 3?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? You're gonna make the chairman second? Okay, we have a second. All right, any other discussion on this before we take the vote? Commissioner Harris, or Commissioner Stevens, anything from y'all? We haven't heard much from y'all, so.
One of the things, again, I want to speak for rural living, is if you go to page 95 in the, where she talks about it says for areas in rural living, they're talking about clusters, creating clusters. They talked about creating a residential agricultural buffer, and they talked about vegetation, buffer 60 to 100, buffer of 30. So she talks about consider update to the AR zoning district or a new zoning district to improve the compatibility of residential design in areas adjacent to working agriculture. She said, consider reducing overall allowable density in a new zoning district. For areas in rural living, create a rural residential zoning district. Reduce allowable overall density from 1.45 dwelling units per acre to 1 dwelling units per acre. That's an important fact right there. And, for those who feel like by creating large lots, bigger lots, we're going to somehow keep more farming, it's the exact opposite. The way we're going to keep farming is by having cluster developments so that land will be able to be farmed longer. And it's just whether we're going to make good use of our land or whether we're not going to make good use of our land. Whether we're going to create an environment that produces longer lasting agriculture with more cluster or conservative conservation districts. It's an important decision, I'm telling you.
The way it stands now, open space can still be farmed. It can still be grazed as pasture, grown timber. The county doesn't take possession of it just because it's open space. It's still in the private ownership.
We do not take possession of it.
That's what I thought.
If it's improved for amenities or passive recreation for that neighborhood, obviously.
The homeowner association would probably take it or something.
And I'll just add to the confusion. We've talked about zoning, which is really an underlayment in here. The other thing we've talked about is the priority investment map and infrastructure and where it is. And right now, we don't have, other than water, there's not any sewer down there. So that's a plan we'll have to evolve as well to provide the development in that extreme southern area. The reason that with option 3 for me, we're already in with sewer in that 210 area, so that's why that makes sense to me to go into the other area. We've got a lot of planning to do, so
and to me, Mr. Chair, not to interrupt, sorry, but that kind of parlays into the question of the priority investment map and those tiers. Do we want to entertain that at this time?
Lord, let us get through this one. Let's get through this.
Just want to make sure we stay fresh with that. I don't want to overlook it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's kind of related to where we go on option 3 or 4. So any other discussion or comments?
Also on that same page, it says most townships in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, have ag zoning with density of 1 unit per 20 acres. Now that keeps it open. And that cuts down on the traffic.
they're the Amish, and they drive, have mules, and they drive carts, too.
They don't have internet connection to Jamaica either, so they get in there soon.
So it's funny that you picked up on that. My colleague here, Ben, was just in Lancaster County here recently. And it was interesting. I mean, there were some of the numbers that they had in terms of preservation of acreage or for in purchase of development rights over the last essentially 40 years are absolutely staggering. Which different than Johnston County, different in some senses, very different, but it's absolutely staggering. It really is.
They're not going to drive a car. They're certainly not going to let people develop their land.
All right, any other discussion? All right, we have a motion and a second to select option 3 as the alternative for going forward with further development of the land use plan update. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's raise hands because I don't see the. And
Aye.
all right, all opposed? All right. Selecting option 3, 5-2. All right. Now do you want to talk about the priority investment map?
Yes, sir.
We're going to get done.
We're going to get done in
I think.
3 hours in.
So essentially, your options are, this is something we provided to you based on the comments that we'd heard in both written and individual conversations. Obviously, you've had an extensive amount of discussion about infrastructure this evening, and you've had discussions about potential regionalization of some of our utilities as we move forward. But this is something that we felt like we at least ought to present to you as an option. Nothing to say you have to adopt that and it has to be a part of this plan today. We do know we have some work to do going forward, post-plan adoption with regard to some of our policies, specifically infrastructure policy, utilities policies. So that can be done. We can do that at that time as well.
Braston, this is what you're talking about right
Yes,
here.
sir, that's correct.
But this is based on the original map.
Yes, sir.
So you would have to modify this map.
We potentially would have to modify it based off of
map 3.
Okay, off of map 3, yes, sir.
Okay, good point.
So once again, this is, as I said, it is, I don't remember where we had that in.
Oh, it was at the end, but I'm wrong. There you go.
So we would have to, potentially, we would have to evaluate what modifications would need to be made there.
So as those areas that we just talked about in option 3 would have to be
included.
So that'll be part of the, so let me ask this, with the selection of option 3, is there changes that you can make that we really don't need to start a whole lot of discussion right now on, or is there further clarifications you need to move forward?
We could make some changes. I don't think the changes are going to be as overwhelming as we think. And the reason I say that, if we look at 40 and 210, that interchange, we already have, that's a tier 3 currently to the south going down to Black Creek. To the east, or rather to the west, sorry, to the west in a border with Harnett County, it's a tier 3. So if we go back to map where it's option 3, it's rural. A lot of that is rural living. So I'm not sure the map's going to change a tremendous amount. There may be some minor modifications.
I just really believe now that we've adopted the wrong map, but we've adopted one. we need to have a final document. Because there's documents here,
Right, yeah, I've been looking
documents
at
there.
3 while we've been talking, so.
We
yeah.
need to have a final document based on map 3.
Yeah.
Changing the tiers, changing everything, because we now know exactly what the map's gonna look like. So that when we vote on this, as important as this vote is, we're all voting on the same thing.
And we have a good
I
understanding.
agree with that.
Yeah, I would suggest is, let us take number 3, let's pare that down, the changes that need to be made to the draft plan. We will exclude from the draft plan, for consideration for now, we will exclude the priority investment map and those tiers, but we will show you what that looks like.
Why don't, we got this 95 page
Yes, sir.
land use plan. Why aren't we gonna have, at the end of the day, a document like this, that's 95 pages long, with all the changes, and this is exactly what we adopt?
Well, I don't understand why we wouldn't adopt the priority investment plan as
I'm
modified.
not saying you wouldn't, I'm just giving you an option.
Yeah,
Because this is something.
Mr. Smith, let's
Yeah,
get
so
that
this
in
is
there, what it's
something.
gonna, the modifications to that and the tiers, and let's
Yeah,
let's have all 95 pages and.
We'll certainly do that. I'm just giving you the option because we knew we gave this as an option at March 20th.
We just need to have
which was new.
one document,
Yes.
all in one place.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're down to the nitty gritty, and let's not have more pieces to talk about. Let's review the whole document and go from there.
Yeah, I agree.
I got one here from January.
Yeah, I know, I went to look at that, and that's the wrong, that's public input right there. He's got the public
And
input.
we trash all the old ones.
Yeah, so, all right, any other comments on it?
I just think we need to be careful when we start describing place types too. Need to be real careful.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, as we have all talked about, this is step 1. Probably the even more heavy lifting is going to be in the zoning piece of it and the ordinances that go with it. I mean, that's,
To speak to your place types, with option 3, I don't know that it's necessary. We don't need to really change anything because you're maintaining the agriculture place type on map 3, so it doesn't necessarily need to be changed. The issue being is based on, once again, you have to keep in mind this was a public process and you did have public engagement and public comment. So there was quite a bit of public feedback that
And we still
spoke to agricultural viability or agricultural, at least agricultural preservation. So we just want to make sure we had that, still noted that. We just don't want to invalidate that at all.
and again, there are other things that we're looking at outside the land use plan to look at agricultural use and extending or sustaining some of that we'll discuss.
Yes. So what you'll have from us when we come back, we'll have a full draft document this will include, and we talked about an implementation matrix. This will be a part of that as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for your work, and Ben, thank you for sitting there patiently and quietly and taking copious notes on that. And to Meg, I know she will get a briefing and maybe watch and get back up to speed on that. So,
all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Hester, I believe it's your turn for manager comment and report.
Braston, can you stay for board comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, board members, just have one item. The sheriff asked if I would make you all aware, this is a requirement of a federal grant, to make the board aware of a grant he's applying for ammunition for training. It's $15,078. There's no action that's required. It just has to make the board aware of it for the minutes to be in the record. So I just wanted to do that on behalf of the sheriff. That's all I have for manager comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now we'll go to board reports and comments. Commissioner Smith, I'll start with you since you have one.
I want to have 2 things I want to pass out. but you may recognize some of them. This is, I just got this week. Just concerned, the fact that I got it is not as important as I really believe we talking about this land use plan, and we talking about water and sewer and spending $1 billion for water and all that. And we don't have total control over developments that are going to be built in this county. And the way the town of Clayton does it is, this is a notice that the planning board will hold a public meeting to make recommendations on the above conditional zoning. This application will proceed to the town council for a public hearing. That's the way that I think, and I really hope that we can move to doing in this county, and that the planning board has a public hearing and they make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. Then the Board of Commissioners makes the final decision on subdivisions above a certain level. And so I know we're not there today. I just got this week. I know we were going to talk about this. So I wanted to bring this, and I wanted to be sure that I mentioned that hopefully we can move to where we get blamed and we're responsible. At least we would make the final decision. All right.
And I think, can I just a quick comment on that? So this is a conditional zoning, which I think would come to us currently under our current system with conditional zoning, correct? But I get what you're saying is we get the blame, and where do we draw the line so that above a certain threshold, we
Right.
deservedly get the blame or the credit, whichever way it is.
But I know that in Clayton, even if it's not conditional zoning, if it's big enough, it goes to the town council. The other thing I wanted to pass out is an article from the Wall Street Journal by William McGurn, which talks about the tremendous wave. He calls it the school choice wave, and talks about 4 states that are getting ready to adopt adopt school choice, to where the educational dollar follows the student. He talks about that there are 20-some states getting ready to do that. And if you've been keeping up with what's happening in the General Assembly with the switch of the lady from to GOP, that's going to be coming in our state too. So I just give this out for information and throw it in the trash can. Just wanted to share with you what's being written about this topic, because it will affect us at some point in time.
Anything else? Commissioner Braswell?
No, sir.
Vice Chairman Harris?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, the Board of Health met this past week, and one of the things that was brought to the board is that there's a real space problem over at the health department, and so there'll be more to come on looking at the possibilities of maybe doing an expansion on the existing health department. That service needs to stay on the hospital campus, and there is land adjacent to that building to be able to expand for more clinical space, and they're also doing some things to work on some more office space as well. Just more to come on that. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware that that is going to be a reality. They're actually turning patients away right now, and they're going to have to expand their clinical services to be able to accommodate.
Commissioner Goblin?
I wish the gentleman with Adrian, what was the gentleman's name that gave us the presentation tonight? Adrian?
From Stewart?
Yeah.
That's Terry Geronimo.
I think he'd done an outstanding job in this presentation. It was very informative, and it was a grandiose plan. And I hate to be accused of lacking vision, but I come from humble beginnings, and when I see price tags of $35 to $40 million for recreation, it does cause me to pause and think about it for a bit. But I commend you for the work you're doing, and in spite of short-sighted people like me, maybe we'll get there and not waste the taxpayers' money. The other thing I want to talk about was we've talked about $500 million for water projects down the road. And I think I heard our Public Utilities Director say, just as part of the conversation, if we want people to come here, we got to do so and so and so. Well, I'll go on record now, I don't want any more people coming here. I know I'm a banker, but there's a sign right there on the back of that door that says how many people we can have in this room. Even though we want to bring more people in, we can't. Well, sometimes that happens with water and sewer projects too.
Yeah, I think the new number was 527 for phase one. Yeah, there was more numbers after that.
837 million.
The billion that Commissioner Smith mentioned.
Yep. Well, we're going to have to plan for the future. Some of us are not going to be here to see it, but we got to be visionaries and we got to think about future generations. A lot of decisions we make today may save big bucks in the future, because it ain't gonna get no cheaper.
That's right. It's true.
And I think with the people who hear about the school, I think each one of us probably knows somebody on the school board, and we need to probably pass along to them, because I, for one, ever since my kids have been going to the public school system, every year the teacher always sends out a want list, and we always go spend $200 or $300 our money and send in, and if the teacher's spending 4 or 5 of hers, maybe they need to, that's not such a bad idea for those people that they had here tonight. And maybe we need to encourage our friends on the school board to maybe look at that.
But could I say one more thing? I want to piggyback on that, Dickie. I want to take you to a couple of people. Chairman J.H. Langdon, Wade Stewart, a young county manager called Rick Hester. 20 years ago, that board did three things that have been monumental for this county, because they stepped up under J.H.'s leadership and Wade's leadership, Rick's leadership. Number one, they bought about 300 or 400 or 500 acres out at the waste facility, so that we don't have to worry about where we're going to put our garbage, because they bought that land. Number two, the rock quarry you're talking about putting water in, they bought that. And number three, for the first time, we started building schools. All three of those things, to buy land for our, get rid of our waste, to buy that quarry so that one day when we needed it for water, we would have it, and to start building schools. J.H. Langdon, Wade Stewart, Rick Hester helped make that happen. And we're benefiting from it today.
All right, I had three things. I'll start with the Parks and Rec. And Commissioner Gott, I agree. The plan is just that, a master plan, and the challenge will be how do we get there, and how long is it going to take? I've seen from my prior role in the town of Clayton that it's something people want, it's something they're willing to pay for. And our job is to figure out how to get there as fiscally responsible as we can. And I commend Adrian and now Austin that joined the team for the work they've done, not just in the Cleveland area, looking at that master plan, but in greenways and other park sites we're looking at, working with the school system. Then how do we use their facilities that are already there for our community? So Adrian and Austin as well, thank you for doing that. The other thing, second thing, is we talked last time about our sewer allocation policy, And I know that we've got some time for that before it goes out for public comment. But again, there's some things on there that I think I want to make sure when we have 60% for the towns, then we've got to figure out what each town is going to get so they can plan, not just 60% and first come, first served. I have a little bit of concern with first come, first served in the rural service areas that we have. How do we weigh those? And first come, first served gives me a little heartburn because we're wanting to have quality development, and I don't want the fifth one in to be a quality development that we all agree is great, but then we don't have sewer for it. I don't know the mechanism for getting there, but just the concerns I have as we move forward on that allocation policy. And finally, and Commissioner Godwin, you can help me if I got the date wrong, but we had talked about the transition to MPO or not and stay like we are. And I believe it's May the 1st, the morning session, we will have representatives from the DOT and Campo here to help us, to provide us information to make the best decision that we can make on that. So thank you for extending that offer to the DOT on that. So those are the three things I have. We do have a need to go into closed session. There will be no action taken. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, she's good. Yeah. So there's that. There will be no action taken once we come back into open session. So Commissioner Smith.
Okay. All right. Called in from the bullpen. I move the board go into closed session to establish or instruct staff concerning negotiation of the price and terms of a contract concerning the acquisition of real property pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A5.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor to go into closed session for the reasons stated, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will go into closed session as soon as we get the
Thank you,
room
Adrian.
cleared.